Mr. Barker, are you there? Okay, we'll give it just 1 second. Thank you for your patience. There you are.
I can't hear. I'm sorry, I'm having technical difficulties.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started.
Bear with me 1 minute.
Okay.
We can hear you, Paul.
I'll give him just 1 second to try to work out his tech issues. Are you good, Paul? I can't hear you. You're muted.
How about now?
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. So
I
welcome.
apologize, everyone.
Oh, no problem. Welcome, everyone, to the Tuesday, August 9, 2022 meeting of the Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board. I'd like to welcome our new member, Ariana Federico Mondragon. Welcome, and we are going to swear her in. And if we could get counsel.
Thank you. Welcome. If I can have you raise your right hand for the screen and repeat after me, if you could unmute. Thank you. I state your name.
I, Ariana Federico Mondragon,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I would bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I will take this obligation freely
that I would take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and I will well faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
Welcome to the board.
Congratulations. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. All right. Pastor Spriggs, are you here?
I don't believe that he is here. He's running a couple of minutes late, so I can go ahead and call the roll if you like.
Thank you.
Chair Delaney,
Here?
Vice Chair Pintar,
Here.
Secretary Pastor Spriggs, Dr. R. Lee Brown, Nadia Kinayu,
Here.
Bonnie King,
Here.
Ariana Federico Mondragon,
Here.
Tim Ware, Gary Wilson,
Here.
Susan Youngflesh.
Present.
Chair Delaney, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parker. Next agenda item is public comments. This is the opportunity for members of the public to address the board on any subject matter within our board's jurisdiction, but not an item on today's open agenda. And each speaker shall have 3 minutes. Mr. Parker, do you have any requests to speak?
We have a few requests to speak that were submitted prior to the meeting, so I'm going to go to those first. There's also one comment to read into the record, and I'll go to that, and then we'll call the speakers who are raising their hand right now. So I'll read the comment first, and then we'll go to the public speakers, just so I make sure there's comments in the record. It's from Natalie Nashat. Hello, CLERB. My name is Natalie Nashat, and I am from zip code 92131. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. For over a year, I've attended CLERB meetings with hope that the board will push strong progress in driving racial equity and accountability in San Diego County jails. Various policy recommendations support this mission, including recently calling for reducing discretionary stops, especially for low-level offenses, proactive review of BWC for analyzing deputy interactions with people of color, and the remaining reduction of racially disparate policing practice items. Recent events, however, have me questioning if CLERB leaders are serious about truly driving change to the extent it claims to support and for which the community clearly needs. The camaraderie displayed between the Sheriff's Department and CLERB at last month's meeting, rather than objective independence, incited one source of concern, especially considering the massive gaps in department competency we address as a group each month. A lack of support for other policies proposed by former CLERB members, such as addressing root causes of fentanyl and opioid deaths with officer and sworn staff body scans upon entry and exit, also increases concern. I urge CLERB to continue to push for the aforementioned policies, recommend the AG oversee detention centers as record-breaking deaths in our jails continue to rise, maintain clear independent oversight of the Sheriff's Department, and advocate for greater systemic change. Thank you for your time and consideration. Next, we will go to, is Francine Maxwell present? Let me see if Ms. Maxwell is here. I do not see Ms. Maxwell. We'll come back to her if she joins. Dr. Tom Packard. All right. Valerie, if you're on, since I'm not able to bring them over at this point, could you please make Dr. Packard a panelist so that he can speak?
Yes, I will do that.
Thank you. And unfortunately, folks and members of the public, my connection is not allowing me to do that. So we'll work through this, and please bear with us while we do. I appreciate your patience. And Ms. Zagal, if you could, can you make me a host or co-host? Perhaps that will alleviate this issue.
Paul, you're a co-host.
All right, let's see if that helps. And it does not. So can you make me a host then? Oh, wait a minute. Somebody just brought Dr. Packard over. Thank you for that. I don't know if that was me or you, but Dr. Packard, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Sorry for the technical difficulties we've been experiencing all night, and your time starts now.
Yeah, okay. My name's Tom Packard. I'm a member of Showing Up for Racial Justice North County. You may be getting tired of me talking about systems change, but I expect to continue with this until I see evidence that your board takes this seriously. I was encouraged at the last month's meeting with Sheriff Ray, where he said he's engaging in systems change through education and discussion with his 4,200 staff members. Please ask him to provide regular updates on this at your meetings. The needed culture change in jails, even with good leadership, is likely to take 3 to 5 years. And in your role, you can help support Sheriff Ray's starting such a project and ensure that it continues under a new sheriff. One example is continuous quality improvement, a common data or organizational change technology used in many progressive government organizations. Please ask the sheriff if the department has any ongoing CQI processes, especially regarding a complex issue like jail deaths. To date, reactions to jail deaths are unique to a case. The response to the auditor's recommendation that CLERB should perform an analysis of overall trends related to jail deaths mentions demographic data only, but a much broader look at other factors is needed with detailed analysis to look at common causes involving staff, sworn staff, civilian staff, and other factors. These comments also apply to work on reduction of racially disparate policing practices. Attachment E for this meeting responded to your recommendations on this by basically describing current practices and adding some questions for applicants, such as asking if an applicant has ever discriminated against anyone. I hope you'll conclude that this response does not adequately address concerns in the report and makes no reference to data on biases in policing. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Packard. Next, we will make Karen Remus. Ms. Segal, can you bring Karen Remus over? Just bear with me, bear with us for a second, please.
Yes, give me a few seconds.
All right, Ms. Remus, I see that you're here. Your time starts now.
Thank you. CLERB members, my name is Karen Remus and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I live in San Diego County and I'm an attorney who's been licensed for almost 30 years. Tonight, I am raising serious concern regarding statements made by CLERB members at last month's public meeting when Sheriff Department staff were in attendance. At the July CLERB meeting, Ms. Delaney stated that she had known the Assistant Sheriff's father, and further, that the Assistant Sheriff's father would be proud of the Assistant Sheriff for the job she is doing. Mr. Ware complimented the Assistant Sheriff for her great vision. This praise is set against the backdrop of the California State Auditor's report issued earlier this year, which found that San Diego County jails are so unsafe and deficient that state lawmakers should intervene. While I appreciate the importance of treating guests with respect, these comments indicated a familiarity and camaraderie that is at odds with the independence and objectivity required of your position. I can only imagine how the families of the over 200 people who have died in county jail since 2006 would feel hearing CLERB members complimenting one of the highest ranking members of the department that runs the facilities where their loved ones died. CLERB members, people are dying at an unprecedented rate in San Diego County jails. Please fulfill your obligation of independent and impartial law enforcement review.
All right, thank you very much. Next, we will go to Francine Maxwell. Looks like Ms. Maxwell is here. Ms. Segal, can you make Ms. Maxwell a presenter, please?
Yes.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can, Ms. Maxwell. Your time starts now.
Great. Thank you so much. Francine Maxwell, Encanto resident, Southeastern San Diego. I would like to ask CLERB if you could have a discussion in reference to an open house. It's time for us to showcase what people are doing right and what they're doing wrong. Although we may only be able to go to the first 2 floors of the jail, and see the new booking system and things like that. I would like to request that you have a conversation and possibly get us, the community, some dates to go in so that we can see how our neighbors, rather they're sheltered or unsheltered neighbors, are being booked. And, you know, and if we can only go on the first 2 floors, then we need to, you know, have that conversation. But I think it's time to have an open house because too much is going on behind the scene and we need to just go ahead and crack the door open and be fully transparent and things like that. So I just wanted to come tonight to ask you for your consideration to have a conversation with the Sheriff's Department, and hopefully some of it will be off hours because we are a working community, many people, and also if it could be near a holiday so that we can see, all the different people that get dropped off and how they are all treated. Thank you so much for your consideration.
All right, thank you, Ms. Maxwell. Next, we will go to Robin Sales. Robin Sales.
Hi, CLERB members. My name is Robin Sales. I am representative of the governance team of Showing Up for Racial Justice North County. Excuse me. Excuse me.
Bless you.
I've been attending your meetings for 18 months now. The CLERB made recommendations for policy changes regarding racial disparities in policing, and the sheriff's response in attachment E cites all the proactive steps that the sheriff does to protect the community. My question is, which community is that? I find it egregious that the CLERB accepted the recommendations made by the internal committee and approved by you to be sent to the sheriff was not taken seriously. It must be frustrating to know that the San Diego sheriff, to whom you showed bias at the last meeting, really does not care what you recommend or how their use of force is specifically focused on people of color, LGBTQ+, and folks with disabilities. The data is all there. However, the intransigence of the sheriff's department is predictable. I implore you to fight back and to recommend that the sheriff's department accept the protect ordinance without delay. Please look it up if you don't know what that is. Thank you.
Okay, next we will go to Darwin. Actually, I apologize. We'll go to Assemblywoman Lori Saldana, retired.
Thank you and good evening. I would like to request that CLERB request information from the County Health Services as they move forward in declaring monkeypox a health emergency in San Diego County. And I recommend that because this is a virus that spreads through direct contact, but also through contaminated clothing and bedding. And the county jails have historically been vectors for other viruses and outbreaks. We saw that with hepatitis. Despite recommendations that the county vaccinate people, they declined. And then we saw the nation's deadliest hepatitis outbreak. And a lot of those cases were the result of people being arrested, going into jail. And if they didn't contract hepatitis there, they certainly introduced it. We actually had 90% of the cases in California and at least 20 deaths that we were aware of. And a lot of that stemmed from overcrowding of jails and people, especially unsheltered people, being arrested and ending up in jails. The concern is that with monkeypox, every healthcare professional that has been discussing this, has been addressing this now for months, is that we don't have enough vaccines and we have a very high risk population of people here in San Diego. And the jails would unfortunately be another vector for spread if monkeypox is introduced. It would be a problem not only for the people in detention, but the staff potentially. So given that San Diego County jails have had significant issues, there was a tuberculosis outbreak a few years ago. A person ended up dying, and it wasn't until then that they realized there were 3 facilities that had been exposed to tuberculosis. I mentioned hepatitis. We saw early in the COVID epidemic, the risk and challenges and high incidence within the detention facilities. For all these reasons, I want to encourage you. I understand your job is not specifically related to health care needs, but monkeypox will create significant hardships, both for detainees and staffing. People have to be in isolation for weeks if they are exposed and show positive signs of monkeypox. So the operations of the jail will be significantly impacted by this going forward. So please be proactive, ask for a status report, and determine how that is going to potentially impact the operations in the jail going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And it looks as if I have the ability now to bring people over and allow them to talk, Mr. Gao, so let me try that, okay? Dr. Fishman. Dr. Fishman?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can.
All right. Thank you. I'm Roman Fishman, he, him, Racial Justice Coalition, San Diego, and North County Equity and Justice Coalition. Wanted to echo what's been shared by other members and say, once again, we're coming to you guys. We are coming every month because it's still, the jails are still out of control and CLERB is not fulfilling its responsibility. We know in July, we had another record month. We had 2 deaths in a week. We had 5 deaths overall in July, and we're around 15 for the year. We're also discussing with ACLU and confirming the fact that San Diego jails have more deaths than Rikers Island, and Rikers Island is supposed to be the worst jail in the US. Horrible conditions and high death rate. Really important to put in that context, because given how horrible it is in San Diego, you would think that the institutions, the structures set up to get us out of this, like CLERB for oversight, like the district attorney and the sheriff's department that's running it, you would make an effort to actually change things. Instead, you're digging in your heels. You're doing exactly what the state audit report dinged you for, and you got slammed because of your lack of oversight. When you take actions, then remove not just the only Black woman with Buki Domingos, but the only person that's a medical professional, it means you don't take seriously this work. If you're serious about oversight, then someone like a medical professional would offer a lot to be able to help you with your investigations and your oversight of this work. And we know that you played an active role in having her removed, and she only served a few months. This also shows from the previous comments about your relationship with some of your members' relationship with things like the undersecretary, the sheriff, and in general with law enforcement. It's not an independent agency. You're supporting and you're covering those that are directly responsible for these deaths. It's horrible. We're going to continue to come here. You're still going to be continuing to face that in terms of the county of San Diego, multi-million-dollar lawsuits that will continue to be paid out. And the families will still be stuck suffering the loss of family members that never should have occurred. And the fact that these institutions in San Diego completely failed them. They did not take their duty and their responsibility seriously, and they instead chose to cover up and protect those that are responsible for the deaths.
Thank you, Dr. Fishman. At this point, Chair Delaney, I do not see any additional requests to speak.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, members of the public. All right, our next agenda item is minutes approval. We did have some revisions. I believe that Valerie, Mr. Parker, were those revisions made, naming Ms. Pintar as vice chair? Okay. Does anyone have any other? Yeah, okay. Any other revisions? And if not, is there a motion to approve? Jai, a motion to approve? Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, Dr. Brown, thank you. We have a first and a second. Any other discussion? I don't see Pastor Sprigg, so Mr. Park, could you do a roll call, please?
Sure. Chair Delaney. Yes. Vice Chair Pintar.
Yes.
Dr. Brown.
Yes. Yes.
Nadia Kinayub. No, Dr. Brown, we got you. Nadia Kinayub.
Yes.
Bonnie Kank.
Yes.
Ariana Federico Mondragon.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Gary Wilson. Susan Youngflesh.
I abstain. I was not present.
Motion Passes. Chair Delaney.
Okay, thank you. Next agenda item is a presentation from Lieutenant Karen Mullins, Detentions Investigations Unit. Lieutenant, are you here? There you are. Welcome.
Thank you.
Were you going to do a presentation? Oh, there you go.
There you go. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Good evening.
Hey, Lieutenant, I apologize, Lieutenant. I don't mean to interrupt you. There
ahead.
is one additional public comment that it looks like we missed. So my apologies. Chair Delaney, may I go to this public comment real quick?
Yes.
It looks like I missed this. Miss Bitar?
Yes,
I apologize, ma'am. It looks like your hand just went up. I don't know if that's the public
I
comment or.
I raised my hand and then somehow it got lowered. I wasn't really sure what was going on.
All right, well.
Thank you.
Your 3 minutes starts now. I apologize for that.
I
inconvenience.
won't even take 3 minutes. Thank you. I'm Doris Bitar. I'm with the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee. I am the California organizer. And although I haven't been to every meeting, I have been following it. And I think what is going to happen is the state is going to take over because we have to have transparency. We have to have it now. The longer we wait, the more deaths are going to occur. And it's just, I like the idea of a tour. It could be a deadline. We can have a tour of the jail twice a month, and it would be a deadline of sorts for them to get their act together. I just fear this is just going to keep going, or, you know, the people who are, I know you're upset about this yourselves, but it's time to really take some kind of action, set some sort of deadlines. And it's just on our side, the concern, I mean, it feels like there's a war going on. It feels like there's a Holocaust going on. Slowly but surely something horrible is happening and continuing. And it's just really time to put an end to it. Thank you.
And thank you. I apologize again. Okay, Lieutenant, I apologize to you now and back to you.
Fine, thank you. Let me reshare my screen. Everyone see the screen sharing?
Yes.
All right, perfect. As was said, I'm Karen Mullins, and I'll be talking with you tonight about drug interdiction at the detention facilities. Currently, I manage the Detention Investigations Unit. We're commonly referred to as DIU. I haven't met anyone on the board, so just for means of introduction, January will be 20 years on the department for me. Over half of the time I've spent in various investigative roles, a station detective, a child abuse detective, homicide detective, and then I was a sergeant in both Rancho San Diego and Lemon Grove, as well as the child abuse and sexual assault unit. I promoted in March of this year, transferred to the Detention Investigations Unit in April. For those of you that may not know about DIU, they investigate all crimes that occur within and around the jail facilities. It includes incidents of assault, weapons, theft, and drugs. And we also assist with homicide and sexual assault investigations that occur in the facilities. In 2021, DIU handled almost 2,400 cases. About 23% of those were narcotics related. Currently, we have 11 detectives, 2 sergeants, and myself in the unit. 7 are from the law enforcement career track and 7 from the detentions and court services track. Current unit has an average of about 16 years on the Sheriff's Department. The range is about 7 to 25 years. So moving on to drugs in the jail 101. Body carrying and mail are the 2 top methods that we see of smuggling narcotics into the jail facilities currently. We've also seen drug drops in public areas that are serviced by incarcerated persons or workers, staff incidents, and items thrown into facility grounds. We monitor intelligence from around the country and also know that some have seen drones used, although we have not seen that yet. Drug prices in the jail regularly increase about 2 to 3 times what's on the street. Smuggling into facilities is often coordinated with outside entities for reasons that we hear money increase status within the jail. Narcotics trends. We've seen all types of narcotics in and around the facilities, but since 2015, fentanyl has gone from no seizures to the top of the drug seizures in 2022. On the left of the slide, you're seeing blue M30 pills. Those are fake counterfeit oxycodone pills that contain varying amounts of fentanyl and methamphetamine, sometimes in lethal doses. Below the pills on the tip of the pencil is an image from the DEA showing a lethal dose of fentanyl. I'm currently in a management course and have been speaking with managers from around the state, and it's interesting to hear that they are just now starting to see fentanyl become a rapidly growing problem in their counties as well as in their jails. Value and payment. Total fentanyl seized year to date in 2022, about 720 grams. The street value on the low end was about $50,000. On the jail value, up to $143,000. The value increases dramatically within custody. Payments most often done through electronic applications with the assistance of someone on the outside, but we do also see things like jail commissary, sexual favors, or money on people's books. Prevention and interception of narcotics. This is a long list of ways we try to prevent and intercept narcotics. I'll talk about a lot of these in upcoming slides, but we monitor changes in the treatment, including naloxone availability in our medically assisted treatment programs, and the intake process, which, as you know, was updated in June. We have what we've called flags or booking flags in our gyms system for potential smugglers or persons that might be introducing into the facility. One of them is drug smuggling risk and a prior 4573, which is the penal code for bringing drugs into the jail or drugs on jail grounds. We support and implement technology like x-rays and body scanners, coordinate and conduct searches, monitor phone calls, and work with the Detention Services Bureau canines. Use our crime analyst, who's invaluable to identify trends that are going on. There's training for deputies and warning signs, videos for the incarcerated population, and discussions of drug smuggling for people coming into the jails. We also have an anonymous public tip line on our website and mail processing center. And we, in our unit, not only do we investigate the inside custody portion of an investigation, we will go out into the community and both hold the dealers and suppliers accountable if we're able. Next slide is Narcan or naloxone deployment. On the left-hand side, you're seeing 2021 jail overdose incidents at 204. And on the bottom right, as of 8/4 of 2022, there have been 129. The numbers per facility, as you can see on both sides of the slide, vary slightly. And there are things we constantly monitor to see if we can identify trends or the ways to mitigate the narcotics, especially when we're seeing something at a specific facility. The Narcan and naloxone inside the facilities was expanded. On June 17th, it became available in the facilities. The posters that you see on the left-hand side, both English and Spanish language, inside the intake area on the right-hand side of the slide. And what you're seeing at the bottom is the plastic box that's in the modules. Those boxes were first installed. Some of the boxes have been installed. Not all of them are completed yet. What those are alarmed boxes in the housing modules. And with those, they do have an alarm, an audible alarm. So not only will the incarcerated people have access to those, but staff will be alerted with the audible alarm that there is an incident going on in the module or location where those are. Just to note, when we did install on June 17th, there have been about 100 incidents of destruction. No uses documented in the first month for a legitimate purpose. We had a lot of people that use them for various reasons other than their intended reason. And since the alarmed boxes have been installed, the number is going down. So we're continuing to monitor the boxes and how that benefits the facilities. Going back to body carrying, our body scanners and body carrying have been the toughest issues we've been facing lately in the jails. The body scanner program in particular was introduced in 2014. We upgraded to new devices in 2019 and are currently and constantly evaluating new technology and potential upgrades to increase the effectiveness of those programs or of that program. This slide, hopefully the audio will play, is a short clip of an incarcerated person who describes how he's provided multiple positive drug tests for his probation officer and how he inserted narcotics into his body to smuggle into the facility if he were to be arrested.
Just went to my PO, checking my PO right now. I've given her 4 dirty tests since I've been out, right? And she's walked in there right now with a 25 G's of black and about a half ounce of white up my ass in case she locked me up, you know? But, you know, she didn't, so I was trying to. I know, she's, hey, and she, so I was in the bathroom at Carl Jr. on Sycamore right now trying to get that out. Like playing a sack real quick, but I couldn't get it out, so I'm just dipping back home.
I wanted to play this clip because I think it shows and demonstrates the casual conversation that these two individuals are having about internal body carrying and smuggling narcotics into the jail facilities. This transitions. The following 4 slides are images from both body scanners as well as an X-ray image where narcotics were recovered in our facilities. This was a bundle of fentanyl, weighed about 440 grams that was recovered. You can see the red area that circled is that on the internal image of the body scanner. Again, I believe this one was fentanyl and methamphetamine. You can see, obviously, the blacked out for privacy reasons. However, the red circle again indicating where the narcotics are internally carried. This is an X-ray of pills and fentanyl. This is a female, the female facility. And again, an X-ray image versus a body scan image. So you can see the difference. Another image of 2 different bundles of fentanyl from both an X-ray and a body scan on the same incident. So the X-ray on the top, the body scan on the bottom left. Just on those, I think it's important because it shows that some things are easier to see than others. Foreign materials, especially narcotics, they're not always discernible using the technology as people think they might be. This is a SDCJ incident of a hidden pocket in the front seam of boxer shorts. There's many concealed areas where narcotics have been located. But what I think some people are not aware of is due to some legislative and related policy changes, we don't immediately conduct strip searches at intake, and we do not strip search everyone upon entry into facilities. This is a case example. I'll use this. It's an adjudicated case from July of 2019. Unfortunately, on the bottom right-hand side, there was an overdose fatality related to this case. Detectives were able to piece the investigation together. There were 2 other incarcerated people who were revived using naloxone, and the investigation revealed that a arrest from the port of entry had brought in 30 grams of powdered fentanyl. The case was adjudicated and the defendant on the left in the yellow was sentenced to 5 years at the end of 2020. Related to this case is in custody death investigations. The bottom shows the public table and the data that's available on the sheriff's website regarding in custody deaths. Homicide and detention investigation units both respond to in custody deaths, along with forensic evidence technicians from our crime lab, criminalists, and medical examiner investigators. The homicide unit and detention investigations both work at processing the scene, searching, obtaining facility video, interviewing incarcerated persons, and follow-up investigations. Follow-up investigations on those in custody deaths where narcotics are suspected are worked in conjunction with DIU, the Special Investigations Narcotics Units, and homicide. A little bit more about those investigations. For the facilities, we've been having them call for canines to assist with searching, obviously doing the search, strip searching when appropriate, and interviewing. DIU may come in to assist immediately or slightly thereafter with additional interviews, intake screening, image reviews, body scanners, and x-rays, and they will follow the movement, court appearances, transfers, medical appointments, video calls, visits, to attempt to answer the questions. Where did the narcotics come from? Are there additional narcotics in our facilities? and who can we hold accountable for bringing these into our facilities and introducing them, and how were they introduced. The bottom right is an example of a parking lot arrest. The facilities that have parking lots, they are actively patrolled as well, hoping to mitigate the possession of drugs on jail grounds and any being possibly introduced into the facility via whatever means, throwing or leaving them in a public area. To further assist facilities, we did introduce the high-risk booking checklist. What I want to point out on this one is the high-risk booking on the top left yellow square has different populations that have been known or more likely to carry, body carry or smuggle narcotics into our facilities. They have additional screening and follow additional protocols to be able to hopefully screen them more thoroughly in order to not let this happen. And introduced in May of 2022, these two forms, this is the J206 body scan abnormality form and the J207 medical discharge or clearance for booking forms. These forms basically are given from our staff to either to the arresting officer, and they allow us to relay pertinent information to the local hospitals. That mitigates the potential for a medical emergency and make sure that the person that we are referring to the hospital when we do see body scan abnormality is accurately evaluated by medical staff at the hospital. The second category that I think is the top issue for us is the mail. The mail processing center has been in operation since 2018. We currently have 6 full-time deputy sheriffs working at the mail processing center. It's a central processing area for all social mail. And as of last month, it expanded and changed after a study was done and approved by the department. It's now moving to a central delivery model, and all mail delivered will be delivered to the MPC as of September 1st, 2022. All the signage has been changed, public websites. Basically what that means is it will all be screened. Legal mail will be screened according to policy, not opened in red. Bottom left picture is one of the MPC deputies doing some of the screening. Top left is a small amount of fentanyl on a piece of mail. We are also exploring alternative delivery for social mail. We've been looking at scanning service or process different companies, basically to possibly reduce the introduction of mail into the facilities while still addressing things like the timely delivery of mail and other issues that might come up. Just another couple examples of mail. This is a postcard. You can see a Suboxone strip behind the stamp on the postcard. Again, Suboxone strips commonly used for opiate addiction in various pieces of mail, and you can see through the yellow circles just the detection of those. Our detentions canine unit has a total of 7 canines. There are 4 detection canines currently that are meth, heroin, and cocaine trained. 1 that is purely fentanyl, and in mid-July of this year, 2 additional canines were trained in the detection of fentanyl. So now we have a total of 3 that can detect fentanyl. Those 2 dogs that were just trained were previously meth, heroin, and cocaine trained. Finally, on our public-facing website, we do have submit a jail crime tip. There is a link. It's a very short form. Those go directly via email to our unit. There's also the phone number that the public can call. That's on the website as well. And we will investigate any tip that we do receive through this system. And that's all I have. Anyone has any questions or comments?
Thank you, Lieutenant. We'll go with members of the public first. Members of the public, do you have any questions? And Mr. Parker, can you assist me with this since I can't see?
Sure, and it will just be it'll be public comment.
Okay.
And it's up to
Yeah.
Lieutenant what she chooses to do with that. At this point, it looks as if Dr. Packard. Dr. Packard?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can.
I guess I'll maybe have to make a comment, not a question, but I'd like to know if deputy and civilian staff are screened regarding drugs. And I'd also like to know what the national research shows about staff bringing in drugs into jails and prisons.
Thank you, Dr. Packard. Next, we will go to.
Council, can Lieutenant Mullins answer the question?
I'd suggest we get through public comment first, and if board members want those questions answered, they can take note of it and ask it afterwards.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Parker, sorry.
Marcus Barusa.
Thank
Marcus
you. It appeared to me like you were, you had a picture of a seizure of Suboxone from male, and I suppose my question is, or my comment is, whether or not the jails are administering Suboxone and other opioid treatments to detainees, and if they're not, how they comply with the ADA after the DOJ's guidance that those sorts of drugs should be available to folks with addiction.
Thank you. And next we will go to Francine Maxwell.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to see if the report can, I don't know if I missed a slide, but the tip line, what has the data shown in reference to, you know, false tips or tips that have resulted into something. And I didn't see, before I stepped away, the ratio of how many times.
Miss Maxwell, you broke there. You didn't see the ratio of how many. Miss Maxwell.
Sorry, could you hear me?
We heard everything up to the ratio of, and then you broke.
Ooh, the ratio of the body scan, how many times a month or, you know, in a quarter does it break down? And the how often do we have to wait for someone to come fix it? Those types of things will be very interesting to the public, because we're thinking that you have Johnny on the spot that can fix things. And we know from other presentations that sometimes it takes a minute for people to come fix. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Maxwell. Next, we will go to Mr. Miller, Yusuf Miller. Mr. Miller.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can, Mr. Miller.
Yes, make the comment towards screening for drug entry to the facilities. I think if we allow it to be porous, then we can't for certain say how drugs are entering into the system. And ask for the CLERB to a methods for 100% contact screening of all and inmates as well. Thank you.
Mr. Miller, unfortunately, you were kind of broken in and out there. I think I got the gist of what you're saying, but I'd like to give you the opportunity to try one more time.
100% contact when it comes to screening on drugs, on staff and inmates as well. We don't want to have a course. There are weak points in staff and inmates.
All right, thank you, Mr. Miller. I believe that Mr. Miller was. I believe you were saying that that there are maybe some weak points when it comes to staff, but also incarcerated persons. You are asking if they could 100% be screened, and that's pretty much what I got from you.
That's good. That's good.
All right, Mr. Miller, thank you. And at this point, I do not see any other public requests for public comment. Chair Delaney.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, our next agenda item is Executive Officers Report. Mr. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if you were going to turn it back over to the lieutenant for a minute.
I'm sorry, you're right. Yes.
Not to the lieutenant, but to your board members. Right.
Yes,
right.
You're right. CLERB board members. Ms.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lieutenant Mullins, for the report. I have a question about the K-9 teams. I toured all of the jail facilities a month or so ago, And what I observed was that all of the dogs, well, at the time, and it sounds like maybe you have trained more dogs recently, maybe there are more dogs than you had 6 weeks ago, but they were all basically housed at one facility. Do they circulate? How often do they patrol the various facilities? When I was there, I didn't see any on site, but obviously I was only there for, a 90-minute window. Tell us how that works.
So currently the canine teams are assigned to 2 different facilities. They're assigned to Las Colinas and East Mesa. As far as budget and where they show up to work and have a locker, they do travel to all the facilities. They commonly work wherever they're called, and they will go not on a set schedule, but they'll definitely go wherever they're asked. They're available for call out through our department 24/7. There's always a canine that's on call and available to respond to whatever facility might need their assistance. And within the last 6 weeks, we did train 2 of the dogs in fentanyl that were not previously trained in fentanyl. So we do have additional dogs that are trained to detect fentanyl.
Chair Delaney, may I ask a couple of follow-up questions and then I'll turn it over to my colleagues?
Sure.
Okay. The body scanners, again, my recollection, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that there's only body scanners at the intake facilities and that incarcerated persons are only scanned at intake. So my question for you is, am I correct about that? Or are there indeed scanners at all the facilities? And if there are not, if there's a suspicion of any sort of smuggling, say, body cavity smuggling, how do you handle that if there's not a scanner at every facility? And I do think it's, that the public deserves to know whether deputy and civilian staff are screened as well, which was one of the questions that came up during public comment.
Sure. There are scanners at the other facilities as well. As far as at the intake facilities, they're able to move people throughout the facility and scan them. Also, all the facilities have X-ray capabilities, and so we can do X-rays as additional forms of screening. Currently, staff and are not screened. We do address any complaint that we do get on our unit.
Ms. Pintar, you're muted.
Sorry. The last question is, I was unclear on what the parking lot arrests referred to. People coming in and out of the facility if they're going to, I don't know, court appointments or something, and then passing smuggling. And I don't think you answered my question about whether deputies and civilian staff were screened yet.
No, I apologize. Deputies and civilian staff are not screened at the facilities. And I think the other part, and you cut out for just a minute, was if people are screened when they go in and out of facilities or they're transferred. It's common for people to be screened as they're transferred. As far as the exact procedures for each facility upon intake and transfer or return from court, I would have to have Mr. Parker write that down and get back to you guys for the correct information.
And I'm sorry if I cut out, but my question about the transfers was whether you mentioned something, Carl. One of the slides said parking lot arrests, and I was not clear what that meant. What does parking lot arrest mean?
That just means deputies that are assigned to what we call the perimeter detail at the facilities. So physically, literally in the parking lot of facilities, there will be people that arrive at the facility, they're contacted, and they oftentimes have narcotics in the parking lots of the facilities. So we make sure to be patrolling those parking lots actively in order to contact those that might be bringing narcotics into the parking lots, and possibly from there introducing them into the common areas of the jails or into the facility through other methods. Is that it, sir?
Yes, it does. I do just want to emphasize, and I appreciate all of the information you provided, but it looks to me like we really only have the Sheriff's Department currently only has 2 dogs that are trained in detecting fentanyl. Is that correct? The rest of the dogs are trained in detecting other drugs, but not fentanyl at this time.
We have 3 of the 7 that are currently trained in fentanyl detection.
But they're not permanently, it doesn't sound like any of them are permanently housed or available at, say, Central Jail, so Vista, the busier intake facilities. They just are randomly assigned to patrol there? They're not there all the time?
No, they can go to whatever facility. They have the discretion. So if, for example, when I talked about trends, they have the discretion to go to whatever facility is having any issues and be there. So they could spend time at San Diego Central Jail. They could spend time at Vista Detention Facility, and they have done so recently. It's just, when we say assigned to, it's more a matter of physical
They
assignment.
rotate, it sounds like, not,
Yeah.
they're not
Yeah, they do.
permanently assigned. Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Okay. Mr. Wilson?
Yes, I have two questions. The federal prison system has had success in reducing the amount of mail coming in and out of the federal prison system by giving inmates access to email. Has that been considered in the jails? And that may or may not be possible because of the facility. Some of the facilities are quite old. And the other question I have you had any instances where drones have been used to smuggle drugs into the detention facilities?
Sure. As far as email, we do have access. They do have access to email. We print and give the email to all of our incarcerated persons. And drones, we have not had any documented incidents of drone use over our facilities yet that have resulted in contraband or anything of that nature.
Yeah. In the federal system, the inmates actually can read and send email, but it's heavily monitored. I just wonder if that's a possibility in a way to reduce the amount of mail that comes in out of the facility.
Yeah, I think what I said, we're actively looking at ways to decrease or change or monitor how much mail does actually get introduced in our facilities.
Anything else, Mr. Wilson?
Chair Youngflesh. Chair Youngflesh.
Oh.
I'm sorry. My goodness. Blast from the past. Chair Delaney. Chair Delaney. Ms. Youngflesh,
Yes.
I'm not talking to you. Chair Delaney.
Yes.
May I clarify something that the lieutenant asked me to write something down? Two things. In reference to the body scanner issue, I think that's what we were talking about. On April 12th, we recommended to the Sheriff's Department to update the body scanner policy and procedure to require the body scans to be completed to include incarcerated persons transferred between facilities. So that was part of the body scan issue. And the response from the department in May was, after review of this request and a thorough review of the process of transferring incarcerated persons from one facility to another, the Detention Services Bureau did not feel at this time this recommendation could be accommodated due to various operational issues. Chief among them, not all facilities have a body scanner installed for use. The number of daily interfacility transfers would drastically slow down operations. The current staffing levels will not allow for DSP personnel to implement this change safely, effectively, and efficiently. So due to those operational issues, that suggestion or that recommendation was not implemented. So I wanted to make sure the board knew that we have made that recommendation, and that was the department's response. So I don't think I need to follow up anything in reference to that. And then also in reference to Mr. Wilson's questions on item 8D tonight, we make a very detailed policy recommendation, and it's timely, especially considering Lieutenant Mullins' presentation that mail is one of the ways that they believe that the substances are getting in. So we can talk more about that at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Any other questions for Lieutenant Mullins? If not, thank you very much for attending. Appreciate it. Appreciate your information. And looking forward to getting more information down the way. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next is Executive Officer's report, Mr. Parker. And we will take public comments after you've finished your report.
Okay, very well. I'll try to make this rather quick. So for the month of July, myself and Lynn Setzler conducted interviews for the CLERB Special Investigator vacancy. A candidate is in the background process. We were hoping that he would have started on Monday. However, it's just taking a little longer, not for any real reason other than just the process. For most of July, I conducted interviews for Administrative Analyst 2 position. Candidate has accepted the offer and will start late August or early September. That's going to be very, very helpful for our data analysis. We have a lot of data and we just are not getting it out to the public. And so hopefully once that candidate starts, we'll be able to do that much better. I met with a representative from Portland, Oregon Cop Watch to discuss CLERB's practices. They reached out to me. Myself and Chair Delaney, every month we attend the Commission on Police Practices CLERB collaboration meeting. So we did that. Myself, Ms. Setzler, and Valerie Zagal Garcia conducted a walkthrough of possible relocation space at the County Administration Center. We are looking, the county wants to reduce its footprint, and if anybody can work out of a county facility, that's the preference, and that's what we're looking to do. So we're in the initial stages of that. I will talk a little bit more about this next item later on in the meeting. But I met with the Deputy Sheriff's Association president, the DSA council, and our outside counsel to discuss CLERB's interviews of sworn members. Something we have been pushing for long before we got audited. We'll talk more about that when that item comes up. I represented CLERB at the Community Resource Fair for Leon L. Williams' 100th birthday celebration. A lot of inquiries at our booth. I attended a monkeypox town hall on Friday, hosted by the NAACP, the San Diego Urban League, Black Men and Women United, and Voice and Viewpoint. It was extremely informative. I learned so much, and I recommended if we can get that link, that be sent out, and every member of the public watch that, and members of the board, so we can try to send it out. And then earlier today, I presented an overview of CLERB at the 60th Detention Services Academy. As far as our investigative workload, last month was a busy month. We had 19 cases as compared to 10 for last July. There are 8 cases on tonight's agenda. At the end of July, there were 94 cases. 32 of those were death cases. Out of those 32 cases, 13 we have documentation on. 19 we were waiting for additional documentation. We received some over the last 9 days. So 2 death cases are on tonight's agenda. In July, there were 5 in custody deaths. Actually, 1 or 2 of those, they were counted as in custody death by the department. However, they were compassionately released, so the department does not have to present those or report those to the state, but they do. And they reported them to us and gave me the opportunity to respond. So there were 5, 2 at Las Colinas, and 1 each at San Diego Central, 1 at George Bailey, and 1 at Vista Detention Facility. We saw 15 open uses of force resulting in great bodily injury cases without a complaint. 1 of those was reported in July. 3 open discharges of firearm without a complaint case. So as far as our cases, attachment C, I'm not really going to get into much detail, but as you can see, we are properly prioritizing and addressing cases. Much better than we did a year ago. And so we'll continue to do that. As far as attachment D, executive officer correspondence to the full clerk, there was 1 Union Tribune article sent. There was an update from Assistant Sheriff Adams Haidar in reference to an inquiry that was presented or that was asked last month by a CLERB member in reference to mental health training. So that was sent out. There was the overview of improvements identified by the San Diegans for Justice, which is later on in the agenda, but I sent that out to the board so they had adequate time to review that. And an email for the response for monkeypox and how the department is going to address that for its incarcerated population. And at this point, that response, they are beginning in the beginning stages of screening for that. And obviously people will be isolated and whatnot. So that's where we are. That's the response we received about monkeypox at this time. As far as policy recommendations, pending responses, there are a few that the department doesn't have yet from last month, but the ones that they do have that we don't have responses on, and I met with the sheriff, and Sheriff Ray is on, personally met to discuss where they are and responding to those. And so at this point, we're still waiting for the fentanyl canine policies and procedures. At the time that we wrote that policy recommendation, there was 1 canine specifically trained for fentanyl, and we simply asked the department to update that. And obviously, if they can have more funding for more, I'm glad to hear that they have 3. That was very, very good. And then at this point, we have 2 others, case-specific recommendations. Actually, I think 3 other case-specific recommendations. And the probation department is still working on its responses to our response to death scenes and the use of technology to monitor the health and safety of inmates. As far as the policy recommendation response that's been touched on already in public comment, I met with the sheriff and members of the Division of Inspectional Services in reference to a little background. So the reduction of racially disparate policing. If you recall, a couple of months ago, there was a subcommittee that was convened for racially disparate practices that were identified by Campaign Zero, the ACLU, and also the Center for Policing Equity that was commissioned by the department. So based upon that, we made the recommendation, and we made 5 recommendations for the best possible way we believed, right? The subcommittee, myself, made these recommendations. So here's the recommendations, and here are the responses. So we did 5 things, and again, I did a bunch of research into this, and that's why we have these 5 these recommendations. So to be clear, I want to make sure that people understand these recommendations, and I'm not tooting my own horn, and the subcommittee was great in supporting this, and we talked about it, but they came from me, and I only say that because I just want to make sure people understand that that me and the board are going to continue to do everything we can to have the department provide the best possible service. So both of us working together along and presenting these things. So I want to make sure that folks understand that in case there's any additional information out there publicly, that is what's happened with these recommendations. That's important. So here's the results. We asked the department to reduce discretionary stops or contacts, traffic or otherwise, pertaining to low-level offenses. We kind of define low level. It's kind of hard to define what a low-level offense is, but what we said was things about like expired registration, equipment violations, no seatbelt in use. Now, to be clear, we didn't ask the department to look the other way. What we asked the department to do was to consider not contacting people for that and kind of figure out a way that maybe you could send citations to registered owners, much like they do with some red light cameras, much like they do with some speeding cameras and other places, things along those lines, right? The response from the department was that the primary purpose of deputies is to enforce the laws, to reduce collision-related injuries and deaths. What we are asking them to enforce or to not enforce, they believe would increase deaths, and they provide some statistics about that. But more importantly, many of these recommendations that we've made, the department contends, actually results in disparate treatment as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The department contends that all of these things that we've asked are in fact public safety concerns, because if you recall, we said, well, we don't think you should be taking action, making these stops and contacts unless there's a true public safety offense. And the department contends that these violations are also considered public safety concerns because they can increase the risk of accidents, motor vehicle accidents and whatnot. So also, there is discretion that's utilized once they've pulled someone over for these, whether they issue a citation or not or whatnot. Kind of connected to that was the elimination for contacting people solely for quality of life issues. And we define those as the ones not jeopardizing public safety in our mind, right? And we contended that if someone's going to jeopardize themselves, if it jeopardizes public safety, like if someone else is going to be injured by it, then we understand. However, the department contends that just like the same response that these incidents of jaywalking, loitering, things like that will result in injuries and death. They believe that it's best to proactively educate the public as opposed to looking the other way, especially when they're receiving calls for service to address these issues. They can't justify looking the other way. Out of the 24,000 traffic and subject stops that they did in 2021, 44%, so 4 out of 9, resulted in a warning, 23 in a citation, 9 resulted in some form of arrest, 9%, right? So 1 out of 11 of those resulted in an arrest. And they break that down in their response. We then added, we would like the use of discretion policy to be looked at and evaluated for whether when officers are considering the use of discretion, whether or not that would result in a racially disparate treatment or outcome. the department's response says, if a deputy were to do that, that's actually being disparate treatment. It's actually having disparate treatment as well and would amount to a civil rights violation. So it would result in racially disparate policing if they were to do that. So the next recommendation we made was to provide justification for a stop on body-worn camera. There's that 30-second delay. I think everybody knows that, right? There's a 30-second delay. It's recording, but there's no sound. Common practice for a deputy is to notify someone when they pull them over about why. The department contends that that's happening, even though it may not be captured on BWC. And if they were to activate the BWC, sometimes these stops happen rather quickly. And so it's different, you know, the 30 seconds, they're not going to wait 30 seconds for the officer safety risk that poses. They're going to immediately get into and do what they need to do. So it's sometimes not feasible. And for the most part, this recommendation, the department believes it's already been implemented. The others, they're not going to implement that. This one has already been implemented by the way traffic stops are conducted and recorded and then noted subsequently in the computer-aided dispatch and in the follow-up after they go back to someone, after they write the citation or the warning. That's on BWC, and it's telling them, this is why I stopped, you know, this is the reason for the contact. This one we thought was very, very important, and it was to proactively review the BWC. There have been indications, you know, nationwide when we did our studies for this, that when departments look at BWC footage for the sole purpose of analyzing the interactions to see if people of color are treated differently than white people. And in this case, the Sheriff's Department says that it does this, that supervisors spot check BWC, they spot check the BWC, and it is in their policy that they'll spot check BWC for compliance and oversight. If they notice that a deputy is doing something that he or she should not, or if there's a discourteous treatment, or if there's a pattern of said treatment, that supervisor knows best, and that supervisor would be able to address that issue and begin to handle that situation. So the department will not implement that because the department says that this policy is already in effect. And then finally, well, are we finally? Yes, finally. All of the information that we tended to indicate, and I think the department will disagree with this a little bit, but in having the conversation, the upfront conversation, the difficult conversation with the department, we contended there is lack of evidence that basic implicit bias training is really effective. We contend it has to be done over and over and over again because you are changing pretty much how someone, what their life experiences are and how they were raised and how they interact, right? So the department's response was that, and somebody in public comment mentioned this, that during the background process, the voice stress analysis and what their background investigators do, that they screen for this by the types of questions they ask. One of the things I realized though, after I wrote this recommendation, but I'm kind of glad I didn't realize at the time, was that as of January 1st of 2022, the law changed. And basically what the California Peace Officers and Standards Trainings post, what they say is that as of January 1st of 2022, the psychological eval pursuant to Government Code 1031 that every sworn member goes through, there's a psych eval that the policies have to be changed so that candidates undergoing this by a psychologist or a psychiatrist, psychologist, or a medical doctor during the background, they must screen for implicit or explicit bias, which I think, so the department, we talked about that with the department has been doing this for 25 years, even before it was a law. So that is the response to our 5 recommendations, 5, kind of 6 or 7 with A and B and whatnot, but those are the responses. And so with that, again, to recap, out of those responses, 1 is already in place. Actually, 2 are already in place. The BWC review and the screening psychologically for implicit and explicit bias. The others would compromise public safety concerns, and 1, if not the other 2, 3, would result in civil rights violations anyway, if they were to implement that. So with that, Chair Delaney, I'm back to you.
Thank you. Members of the public, do we have any, Paul, do you want to do the sustained findings and the responses before we go to public?
No, how about we just go to public now? I mean, look, the sustained finding response, we're waiting for some things.
Okay.
We're waiting for one case, and then so basically that wraps up my EO report, but we can go to the public.
All right. So members of the public, Mr. Parker, can you see if anyone has their hand raised?
Bear with me for a minute here while I try to get my computer to work again. And I can't. Oh, here we go. Yes, it looks like we have one request to speak, and it's Dr. Tom Packard. Dr. Packard.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, and sorry to be Johnny One Note on this, but I referred to that attachment in my comments, and if they think that by asking somebody if they've ever discriminated against somebody is enough to check them for anti-bias, I hope you all don't think that's adequate. They're actually pretty scientifically developed instruments to assess bias. So I still think, I'm glad you made the point that one training is not enough, but I think if that's all, everything that's in there is what they're doing, that is still not enough. I think that needs a lot more work, and I hope the board will kind of work on that further. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Packard. Next, we will go to Robin Sales. Ms. Sales.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call. What concerns me is all of the justice reports that you mentioned, Paul, all say that there's disparities, racial disparities in traffic stops. That shouldn't be questioned at this point. What concerns me is, we know about the broken windows. It's not a theory, it's a practice where persons are stopped because they have a broken tail light or some other infraction, minor infraction. And that's sort of a doorway to the sheriff's department questioning people. And unfortunately, a lot of people know that they don't have to answer the questions. So they do because they're afraid, especially people of color are very afraid of the sheriff's department. And I would say that the sheriff's department is just giving a lot of excuses here. They're not really taking anything into account about what really happens in the field. And I agree with Dr. Packard that even a psychological evaluation for bias during their interview or that process, and then occasional updates is not enough to root out cultural bias, longstanding biases from family, community, culture, etc. And so, it's my opinion that the sheriff's department should be having bias training once or twice a year for the deputies, not once a year, once every 5 years. So I hope the CLERB will continue to press on these because the stop data also proves that for Black and brown people, there is less contraband found in these stops than white people. So I think it's incumbent on the CLERB to look into that data very carefully to make sure they understand what is actually occurring. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, Mr. Parker?
Next, we will go to Mr. Oh, yes. Can you hear me? Anybody? Mr. Miller, are you there? Mr.
Yeah,
Miller.
can you hear me?
We can hear
Hello?
you. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay,
Yes. Can you hear
great.
me?
Yes, I can. Yes, the replies from the sheriff's department, it takes me back to well before George Floyd, when we were asking these same type of questions that there's nothing to see here, and there's nothing we're really willing to do that we're not already doing. So I would like to say that when it comes to traffic stops, an expired registration is not a health hazard or a accident hazard, and some of a cracked window is not a
a health hazard or a safety hazard. As a matter of fact, it appears from what I've seen, the majority of these accidents are speed and drug and negligence, not an expired tag, not a cracked windshield. So we really need to look at this and find out how we can say yes instead of saying no, no, or we're already doing it. And it just blows my mind that these answers just takes me way back to before George Floyd, when we were asking the same questions before we even invited to the table. So please reconsider and look at those things and make sure that the answer is a logical no and a logical yes when we're coming to these questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. At this point, Chair Delaney, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. There are no other requests to speak. I did forget to add something on my executive officer report that there will be a special meeting of CLERB on August 23rd. August 23rd for two reasons. Number one, we need to do the 30-day teleconference vote. And then number two, the annual report, CLERB's annual report will be presented during that time. So, and then also there's a NACOL conference, the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, that's happening the week of September 11th. So myself and Vice Chair Pintar will not be here. So we're gonna have the meeting on September 20th for the September meeting. I just want to make sure the public was aware of that, and more importantly, at this point, quite frankly, the board members, so that they know, and we'll send out additional information as we know more. With that, Chair Delaney, back to you.
All right. Member comments. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Ayub? Keen Ayub?
I listened to the sheriff's response to the recommendations that we put forward. I just want to clarify for everybody's benefit. All of these recommendations that we put forward were based on 1, facts and 2, actual cases. So to clarify, the sheriffs did not consider those things impactful enough to consider those recommendations to take it.
Thank you. Vice Chair Pintar?
I have a question for Paul and then some comments on the sheriff's response to our recommendations, if I can. Mr. Parker, I'm looking at the policy recommendations pending responses, and I thought that the sheriff's department had told us that they did change their policies related to the Frost case, case number 21055, to change the language from an arrestee who identifies as being female should to shall be taken. Is that not the case? I thought they told us they changed their policy based on our recommendation. No?
They did not change the policy based on our recommendation. That's the one to my understanding. We have not received an official response from the department because they haven't received they know about it, but there's still an official process we go through to notify them, hey, this is exactly what we want. We did not, they have not responded to that because they don't have that official yet. I'm in process of doing that. What they did do in reference to that specific case is after that specific incident, there were changes made to their policies, several of their policies and procedures after that incident had occurred. So their changes have been made. We will get the letter to them asking for their specific response to this recommendation.
That's right. Thank you. I recall now that they did make a change, but it was not, we had not actually reviewed the case yet. It was after.
Correct. Yes, that's right.
So just in reference to the sheriff's response to the recommendations we've made, a couple of comments I'd like to make and questions. I don't know if Sheriff Ray or anyone can answer them now, but one question I had in relation to the body worn camera, the response was that sometimes there's a delay in the body worn, when the body worn camera BWC activates. The deputy may tell the person who's being detained, this is why you've been pulled over, or this is why I'm contacting you, and it might not get caught on the body worn camera. To me, that seems easily solvable. Can they not restate it? They know that there is a delay. It seems really important to know, for us to know what the person was told, why they were being detained, for us to hear in the deputy's own words, why they were pulling somebody over, why they were approaching somebody who's doing what the sheriff perceives or the deputy perceives as loitering? Can we ask them to restate it, at the end of the communication, so it is on the body worn camera? I don't accept that just because there's a delay in the recording that we can't get it restated at some point, that it is caught on tape. Is there a way for us to amend that recommendation? Can we ask the sheriff to consider doing that? The sheriff's department? I don't know if you want to respond or if we want to make a follow-up recommendation.
Well, I think what we can do, if I may, I think, look, whatever you folks tell me to do, if you want additional clarification, I don't believe, after the conversations I've had with the department, that they're going to do anything different than what they've documented in these cases, in these situations. However, if CLERB, if you want me to write a letter on CLERB's behalf saying, okay, we're in receipt, we would like, and based on your response, we think you should do this. Look, we can do that. We can definitely do that. But at this point, it was my understanding, and again, I personally met with command level folks here, that this is going to be the response. But I it's up to what CLERB asks me to do, unless there's a during board member liaison query, or if anybody wants to opine on that right now. But we can certainly make that official request to.
I don't think it's a lot to ask, and I think it would go a long way towards transparency into why some of these contacts are being made. My second comment is that I know I personally have to go through anti-bias training on an annual basis for my work, and that there are I believe that there are a lot of tools available through human resource associations that are designed to assess personal bias beyond just asking somebody in a direct manner, do you believe that you possess any biases? And I would ask that we ask the sheriff's department to research some of those tools. They are more of an in-depth questionnaire that asks a variety of questions to assess bias. And I think that would be an appropriate request as well. Oh, in addition to what you stated, Paul, training beyond 1 4-hour training block. I am not a law enforcement officer, and I am required to complete a training on bias annually.
And if I may, Vice Chair Pintar, Chair Delaney, I hope I'm not out of line here, but the one thing that is important to remember is that per this new law, right? It's not about the background. I mean, whatever the background investigator does, the background investigator does. But honestly, if it's being assessed from a medical professional, right, that's their responsibility to do these psychological backgrounds. Now, I don't know, back in the day, I know that was a very detailed process, and I believe that it still is. But if they're focused on that, as the law says, then hopefully that eliminates a little bit of the concern that, at least as of 8 months ago, it was mandatory that those screenings happened that way. Now, if you want me to put something else in writing or whatnot, I can certainly do that.
Okay, so maybe I didn't follow you when you provided that answer, but I don't think that there's any reason why we can't ask.
Yeah, I know that back in the day they did the Minnesota Multiphasic Institute, the MMPI, which is extremely detailed and then would be reviewed. And I know that they still do the MMPI, and these are assessed by, now they're probably contract personnel, right? I don't know, but by trained medical professionals to see what those the psychological outcome is. So, but whatever CLERB asks me to do to follow up, of course, I'll do.
Thank you.
Would you like us to put that on the agenda for a future meeting? Vice Chair Pintar?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Mondragon?
Hi, thank you. And I actually had very same comments of like Marianne around the body worn camera and the questions. I mean, the training for implicit bias training. So I won't ask those questions. I did have a question, well, more like a clarification question for the review of the body worn camera footage analyzed by supervisors. Does that get tracked somewhere? If that's something that a supervisor notes down or there's a discovery of misconduct, is that tracked? Because it says in the report that if a supervisor discovers a policy violation, supervisor takes appropriate action at that time. But I was just wondering if there's some sort of tracking that happens.
That's a good question. And ma'am, I don't have the answer to that. That I don't know. And that's something perhaps the department can perhaps, if they know during the board member liaison query, or if there's someone on the call right now that would be able to answer that question. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, I think that would be important to know, especially if, you know, if an incident of misconduct that includes like a complaint from a public, from the public is brought up. I think it would be good to see what has previously happened.
I think complaints, and again, I could be completely speaking out of line here, right? Complaints would be tracked. One would assume that those are tracked. But as far as what a supervisor finds or does not find on a spot check and how often those happen and if there's a trend or whatever, that I don't know, and I'd have to defer to the department. It looks like we may have an answer to that. Chair Delaney, if I can go to perhaps Sergeant Tingley, our new liaison, and that's another thing I forgot to mention in our EO report, Sergeant Kristen Brayman will no longer be our liaison. Unfortunately, she's been wonderful to us as far as getting all of the information that we need and facilitating these kind of dialogues, which is very, very good. She's leaving. Sergeant Tingley is our new liaison as of Friday. Sergeant Tingley, may I turn this over to you?
Yes, good evening. To answer your question on whether or not each review is tracked when something is observed, it'll start at the command level. So the sergeant or the supervisor that is reviewing the issue will address it with the command, and the command then will take action based on what they observe. So those actions can result in speaking with the deputy or the officer about the actions that they saw. It can be referred to internal investigations, which then, yes, there would be a tracking device there. It can be stored at the station, has a tracking device as far as documentation. And then if for some reason that issue that they see rises to a level where it needs to be internally investigation, then it does go to IA and an internal investigation by the department is completed.
Thank you.
I hope that answers your question, ma'am.
Thank you, Sergeant. Appreciate it. All right. Ms. Kinayu?
I'm sorry. I think when I spoke last time, it wasn't clear that I was asking. So this time I'm going to ask specifically, what is the sheriff's plan then if they have rejected the recommendations that we have put forward regarding racial bias? And is there one in place that they plan to share with us?
Sergeant, would you like to answer that? Or Sergeant Brayman, are you still there? Do you want to take a shot at it?
Sorry about that. We're gonna have to get back to you on that. We'll get a response and we'll get back to the board on that question.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Wilson?
I have a quick question, and maybe the liaison officer may know off the top of his head, or if you can research it. But we call it pre-roll. In other words, you activate a camera, and then from the moment you activate it, it will go back 30 seconds and we'll have the video. My doorbell, somebody rings my doorbell and the video for 15 seconds before that plays and the audio. I'm just wondering, with the body worn cameras, is that technology out there? I know you can do pre-roll with the video, but what we're missing is the audio part, so that can you capture both the video and the audio. I mean, is it technologically possible, and does that equipment exist? I'm just curious, because it exists for my doorbell, which I find very fascinating.
I wonder if we could get, Sergeant, can you get back to us on that, or?
Absolutely, I can get back to you on that. As far as our cameras, they're not designed at this point. For that, there's a 30-second delay. So I will get that answer back to you as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? CLERB members? No? Okay, then we will go on to Mr. Parker, you didn't want to go over the Frost sustained finding pending response?
No, we'll wait for the department to, we notify, we will notify. Yes, we'll wait.
Got it. All right. Now the board chair's report. I just have a little something to say. First of all, we appreciate the public's participation, their comments and suggestions. And I want them to know that all of our cases are very important, but our death cases are our #1 priority. CLERB board members take their responsibility very seriously. They are dedicated to be fair, unbiased, and go where the facts lead. And I want everyone to know that. And just a little side note regarding a comment or two that was made regarding something I said. Yes, I did know the father. He had passed away many years ago. I don't know the assistant sheriff. I've never met her, and nor would that in any way change my findings or change how I would look at a case. I go to the facts as everyone else does and go where they lead. And with that, again, I want to thank the public for your participation. Okay, we'll move on now to new business. I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Parker.
All right, well, I'm going to turn it over. The first item is the continuance of the teleconferencing meeting option pursuant to Government Code Section 54953E, and I will turn it over to Ms. Hoffman for the verbiage, and we'll go from there.
Just to clarify, this is for our special meeting.
It's for the next 30 days.
Right.
Any meeting that we have in the next 30 days. Yep.
Thank you. If your board would like to continue teleconferencing, the appropriate finding would be that CLERB has reconsidered the circumstances of the state of emergency, and state and local officials continue to recommend measures to promote social distancing.
Okay. Do we have a motion? Ms. Pintar?
I think Mr. Wilson moved, but I'm happy to second.
Ladies first. Ladies first.
I already said you, so Mr.
All
Wilson.
right, so we'll do Mr. Wilson made the motion, Vice Chair Pintar seconded. Is in your discussion? Okay, Pastor Spriggs, you're here. Could you call for the vote, please? Or call the vote, I should say.
Yes. Susan Youngflesh?
Yes.
Eileen Delaney?
Yes.
Pastor Robert Spriggs Jr.? Yes. Dr. R. Lee Brown? Okay. Nadia Keene Ayub?
Yes.
Bonnie Kink?
No.
Marianne Pintar?
Yes.
Tim Ware? G.I. Wilson?
Yes.
And Ariana Federico Mondragon.
Yes.
I hope I said your name right.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
All right, motion carries. Thank you very much. Next one is 180-day update recommendation for this California State Auditor Report, which was our attachment F. Mr. Parker?
As we all recall, we were, as the Sheriff's Department was audited by the state, the California State Auditor, as were we during the very same audit. And there were 6 recommendations for us to address. And we have to respond within 30 days, 60 days, 180, and 1 year. This is our 180-day response. The only thing that's changed, two things that have changed. The number one thing that's changed, and this is something we had pushed for before it even being recommended. We started the ball rolling on this. Members of the community, myself, members of this board, we and even members of the department had expressed concern that we were not interviewing, that the deputies were able to or are able to say no when we want an interview. So as our rules and regulations state that they, we have the subpoena authority and whatnot, but there was an agreement that was entered into over 20 years ago and it was amended in 2003. So at this point, we've been having these conversations again with the Deputy Sheriff's Association President, the Deputy Sheriff Association Council, and our outside counsel, Dwayne Bennett. We came to an agreement. It's not codified yet, but the agreement is that when we ask for an interview, if CLERB deems it important to ask for the interview, because many of the times we do get our answers from the employee response forms that we submit. Those are mandated. We get a lot of information from those forms. But if we think that we need additional information, the DSA will permit interviews of their sworn staff when we deem the interview is necessary. And at that point, then we'll work with counsel and whatnot to ensure that the interviews are conducted pursuant to the protections provided by POBAR, the Peace Officer Procedural Bill of Rights, and then obviously California Government Codes, Section 3300, 3313, whatnot. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. That's something that we worked hard for, and because the Deputy Sheriff's Association, they're open to this. And again, we could ram this down their throat, and they could show up and say, "We plead the fifth," right? We plead the fifth. But because we're able to have these conversations, that's not going to happen. So that's a big step. That's a big win for this county as far as the transparency, not necessarily transparency, but getting the information as part of our investigation. So that's a big deal. The other thing that we halfway completed is our training manual. We already have a bunch of information in a very thick manual, and we will be rolling out the rest of our training program with our new hire when that candidate starts in the next week or two. That point, we'll be able to say that that is completed. We've already completed the policies and procedures about death investigations. We are working very, very closely, had several productive meetings with county council over the last couple of weeks about the changes to the rules and regulations to talk about in-custody death prioritization, which we've already done internally, but also to talk about how those in-custody deaths include natural deaths, which we already get right now, but to codify. And then finally, our annual report, we'll be able to say that we've done this as well. In the annual report, there'll be systemic issues and trends, which we've already been fully transparent. There's not going to be any surprises in this annual report. We have said this, we've given updates every month, but we will break down the trends for the deaths in custody. And that's really what this recommendation is about. That's the primary focus of this annual report, quite frankly. And we're going to also do a 6-month report for 2022. A lot of the things that have happened that CLERB has been effective in making positive changes has happened over the last, since January. So we're going to have those reports, and that'll be on August 23rd agenda. So that is the update to the auditor that was filed with them on the due date, August 3rd.
Does anyone, members of the public, have any comments?
I don't see any.
Okay. Any members of CLERB? No. All right. Let's move on then. Mr. Parker?
The next item, if you recall, when Sheriff Ray was here last month, he volunteered to provide, there was a question, I think, from, I think it was a member of the public, but then followed up by some comments from our board members about, Sheriff Ray mentioned that there were about 400 instances over, since the beginning, I think of, it'll be 2020, right, of administration of naloxone, Narcan, in situations in the detention facilities when the incarcerated person after the administration did not die. We know about the deaths, and that's been the focus. But the information that was provided, and I did a rough, calculation, just based on what was provided, which is your attachment G. These are the basic information about the facilities, the number of doses deployed. You heard Lieutenant Mullins earlier say that in 2021, there were, I think, over 600 doses administered and 204 instances where this, different situations where and I hope I don't speak out of line for the department. I probably should be cautious. I'm not certain, quite frankly, if this means that, for example, I did the calculations and it looks like about 400, right? Since January of 2020 to to July of 2022. Just because Narcan was administered, again, I'm not certain that means that was an overdose that was occurring or potential overdose. I mean, there is no harm to administer Narcan if someone's unresponsive or showing some signs and symptoms, and I don't know. But I think it's fair to say, okay, Narcan was administered on about 400 instances. The majority of those, from the numbers that were provided, were at Central with a little over 200. Next was Vista Detention Facility with about 90. Next was George Bailey with about 56 to 60. Las Colinas Detention Reentry Facility was about 30. And there were a handful at East Mason. It looks like 1 or 2 at South Bay. I might be missing a couple numbers here and there, but that's the calculations I've come up with. So that's the information that was provided by the department in response. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you, Chair Delaney.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Any members of the public have any comments?
I see one, Mr. Miller, Yusuf Miller.
Mr. Miller?
Yes, Yusuf Miller, North County Equity and Justice Coalition and Saving Lives in Custody campaign. And I would like to say on behalf of any person who was actually saved from the Narcan administration that thank you and bravo for that. I'm sure the families are very happy about that, but we do need to look critically at these doses and how they represent a life saved. And I'm not trying to take away from or diminish anything that the Sheriff's Department does, but sometimes it takes multiple administrations just for a single person. So depending on where they are in the reaction. And number two, I didn't get to say before, but I would hope we can investigate how many people, how many staff over a 10-year period has been arrested and fired for bringing drugs into the jails over a 10-year period. I was curious to hear that answer from the department. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. With that, Chair Delaney, I don't see any other comments.
Okay. Any board members? Members of the Ms. Pintar?
Paul, I believe you said that, that there about 400 doses administered was your calculation, but we do not know, no?
There were 400 incidents. The doses are well over 400.
Yeah. Okay, got it. Incidents or instances of it being administered. However, we don't know how many of those were actual drug overdoses. Is that correct?
I'm not aware of that based on the data provided. The Sheriff's Department, if they'd like to opine on that, that'd be wonderful. I would assume, I mean, let's be honest, out of those 400, I'm sure at least one. I'm sure there's probably several.
No, and as we just heard from the public, any life saved, it's a great, and we're grateful for that. I really just wanted to know the information because I think if indeed these were 400 overdoses, it points to the dramatic problem we have with overdoses and illicit substances in the jails is really the point that I'm making here. And I think it would be helpful to know. And I know based on the reports that we read that it is administered when, someone is found unresponsive and rightly they administer it because they don't know what is happening and it could save their life. But I do think it would be helpful to know how many times this was actually an overdose. More to the point of what's the extent of overdoses that we're seeing, not because I'm critical that it's being used not for an overdose. I hope I'm being clear.
No, you're being very clear. Absolutely. So I know the Sheriff's Department's on the call, and maybe that's something that I know that they're non-fatal outcomes. That's what I know. And so if the board would like that additional information, then I can work with the department to see if we can get that additional information. How many were actually diagnosed as a drug-related situation?
Sergeant, you don't have that at hand, do you?
No, I do not. I'd have to get back to you on that.
Could you please?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, any other board comments? Okay, and so now the next one is policy recommendation. Mr. Parker?
Yeah. This is something that, yeah, I was doing some research and again, what we're trying to do here staff wise, right? And I know this board is trying to do. I just want to recap something. For what it's worth, this board over the last several months has been extremely proactive when it comes to acknowledging that the deaths in custody are the #1 priority, right? So we have, prior to this, and I'm just giving this as the background, we have entered into the MOU for seeing responses. We have made recommendations for the health and welfare to institute technology, whether it's a wristband, a Fitbit type of document or item, anything that we can do. Narcan for the incarcerated people, which was implemented. The technology, which was basically that they're going to look at technology and consider what we asked for. To improve the family liaison protocol for communication, to have the medical examiner's office not seal records, to work on the body scanners, to say that they need more, to improve, to write the fentanyl dog policies, to include the sniffing of anybody, to include members of the department. We also called for the independent audit. So we have been responsive, and I hope that folks understand we've been responsive. So earlier, we heard Lieutenant Mullins say that the department believes that the 2 top ways that drugs are getting into facilities, and I didn't know this prior to tonight. I kind of knew body cavity was probably #1, but we were just shooting in the dark with this policy recommendation about mail. We've been researching, okay, what can we do? What can we put forward? And so what we're presenting to the board tonight is, as you heard Lieutenant Mullins say, drugs are getting in through the mail. Non-legal mail. Legal mail, this policy does not apply to that. There are protections and rights for legal mail. This we're saying, okay, to Mr. Wilson's point, there is email. We communicate with the incarcerated persons via email. We do it right now. Now, I don't know the situation. I don't know how many I don't know how that works. I think the emails are printed out and handed, right? Because obviously there would be operational issues if kiosks were added and you have people looking at mail and looking at emails and just taking all the time in the world to do so. We understand that. But what we're saying is the capability already seems to exist. Why not digitally scan documents that are coming in and either institute kiosks, or if not, because of the operational delays, at minimum, print those items out and hand them to the inmates. At least you're printing them out on paper that has been controlled, right? For the most part, that has been controlled. It's not coming from the outside, it's inside. Now, again, we hear, and this policy recommendation says it, that, okay, that trusts everybody involved in the process, right, internally. And so that's part of it. So our recommendation is scan digitally the mail, either create some kind of kiosk system, but knowing that that's going to be an operational delay, at minimum, print it out and hand it to them. CLERB will acknowledge, obviously, it's important to get mail from someone that you love. We know that, and to hold on to it and whatever. However, we do believe that any step we can take to prevent just one death, we think that the department should look at it. And it's good to hear that they are. But this is the recommendation, not knowing that that was in process. This is a recommendation for you folks to consider, and I'll turn it over to you, Chair Delaney.
Thank you. Community members, public, any comments?
Yes, there is. It looks like Paloma Cerna. Ms. Cerna?
Hi, yes, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to board members, but I hear everything, everything that's been said, and it all sounds good. But number one, drug in the mail, just decades, of known cases of it's the deputies, it's the workers that are also involved in bringing in drugs into the jail. I mean, that's been known. Two, I know the clerks have done a terrific job in re-looking at my daughter's case, Elisa Serna, that died in November of 2019, and gave it a second chance to look, and found that one deputy was responsible for her death, including the nurse. But there's more, there's more than one person that's involved. And I wonder why the clerk never took a look at that, because I did send an email to CLERB asking if they saw all the evidence, including video. And I got a response back stating that all evidence was reviewed. And, like I said, I really do appreciate that CLERB is starting to change some of their tactics, and getting things passed and done. But also too, why has it taken so long? It's like also the CLERB is being forced with the county jail to do the right thing. Because I have an open case right now, but still, if you guys were to go back and look at the video, I'm sure you could find more people at fault. And more needs to be done. And it's like what another public speaker had stated, it feels like the Holocaust. These are somebody's family member, someone's children, mother. But I do feel the same way, that people are trying to get rid of the black sheep of the community by just by killing them off. And they're not God. They should not be able to do that. And the deaths are continuing even now, even at the highest rate, because no one is being held accountable. Not at all. We have a nurse. I need deputies to be also held accountable for my daughter's death. She was in there for 5 days. I've watched the video, the evidence, which I really do advise you guys to please come out and take a look at this video when it's being presented in court on August 30th at the El Cajon jail. Because it's a shame that this is going on. She was my daughter, my oldest daughter, out of 6 kids. Someone needs to be held accountable. More needs to be done now. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Ms. Serna, my condolences. Thank you for speaking. Next, we'll go to Mr. Miller. Mr. Yusuf Miller. I'm sorry, I'm having a little technical difficulty. Mr. Miller.
Yes, I almost forgot what I had to say just listening to Mrs. Serna there. Yeah, we've had multiple prior inmates who say that there are staff and officers also involved in it. So I say again, please ask for the data on how many staff over 10 years has been arrested or fired for breaking these drug rules. We know that there's some, but I want a data spreadsheet on that. Please ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. And to the point of that topic, in our recommendation tonight, we clearly state that, bear with me, the practice will not totally eliminate the possibility of illicit substances being introduced in the incarcerated person population, as it is dependent on the ethics, integrity, and identity of the persons preparing or hand delivering the mail. Also, to be clear, in our fentanyl dog policy, we recommended that not just folks entering the facility, but staff as well are subjected to that. So CLERB is we are bringing that to light and putting that in documentation for the department to consider as we move forward. So thank you, Mr. Miller and members of the community. With that, Chair Delaney, I don't see any other comments.
Okay, thank you. Board members, any comments? No? Okay, we will move on then. Mr. Parker, could you just report on the feasibility of third-party jail administration?
Absolutely. So a couple of months ago, a former board member brought forward the item of, and also members of the public brought forward the item of having specifically the Attorney General's office look at taking over running the jails. I think the terminology that was used, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but it was something along the lines of a special master or grand master, something along those lines, to take over running the San Diego County jails run by the Sheriff's Department. So over the last couple of months, and without getting into, I'm not going to divulge confidential attorney-client information. So what I am going to say is what's out there publicly. So what's out there publicly is this: what are the options? So first off, we do believe that CLERB has the ability to write or to whomever CLERB tells me to write a letter to, whether it's the Attorney General, whether it's the Board of Supervisors, whomever. But here's what's out there publicly, and here's what can and cannot happen law-wise, okay, by the Attorney General's office. Oh, by the way, I've tried to contact the Attorney General's office, but they won't talk to me. They won't talk to me. I have to put everything in writing to them, and so that's they will not have a conversation. Everything has to be in writing. So that's that. So specifically, as it pertains to the Attorney General's office, they do not have the capability to come in and run a jail. Now, if the members of the public or if the state legislature believes that that's an option, that that's something that should happen, then obviously, just like the groups that we have on the phone tonight, working with elected officials with the Saving Lives in Custody Act, it's going to have to be a legislative change, one would think, right? That to allow the Attorney General's office to come in and run a detention facility. What they can do, what the Attorney General's office can do, is they have a civil rights enforcement section. Again, it's all public document, all public information. Civil rights enforcement section, where they investigate allegations of police misconduct. They will look at things filed by complainants who have already exhausted the local review process. Okay, so complainants who have already exhausted the local review process. Now, the Attorney General's office also has a section specifically about police practices. And what they can do is to conduct civil pattern and practice violation investigations. So if public or elected officials or the law enforcement agency itself or whatever, they can ask for this. If there's evidence to suggest systemic police misconduct, the Attorney General's office can look at that for the purpose of identifying and compelling systemic issue changes, identifying what they may be, and then compelling systemic issue changes that violate the constitutional rights. So that's what the Attorney General's office can do. Now, what's going on statewide? So statewide right now, my research has indicated that the Attorney General's office has currently opened one pattern and practice investigation currently. They just opened it, I believe, in January against the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Department. The Attorney General's office has opened this because of concerns about the conditions at the jails, resistance of that, alleged resistance of that Sheriff's Department to local oversight, and then other misconduct. I don't know what that means, but that's what's out there publicly that I can come up with. All right, so again, if the issue is for this board, you can do a couple of things. For this board to write a letter to the Attorney General, for this board to write a letter to the Board of Supervisors asking for the Attorney General's office to have control of or to take over administration of the jails. If those two things, I mean, that's pretty much my understanding of what the public had been asking for. But my understanding is that that can't happen as far as administration of the jails. Now, pattern and practice, yes. The Attorney General's office can consider a pattern and practice investigation. They're also, again, to have the Attorney General's office look at this, there must be, I think, I'm not an attorney, but a legislative change just to have that happen, be an option. So those are your options. Your options are, you could direct me to write a letter to the Attorney General. Now, again, and I know the public's here, and I've always been very transparent with the public. I'm going to be transparent with this board. I've been transparent with the department. To write a letter to the Attorney General, asking him to do something they're not legally able to do, okay, I don't think that's probably the right thing to do. To send a letter to the Board of Supervisors to request that the Attorney General come in and take over the jails when it doesn't seem like that's a legal option for them, doesn't seem like the right thing to do. This board could do nothing. This board could write a letter asking the Board of Supervisors to support a legislative change. This board could write a letter asking the Board of Supervisors to look at or write a letter to the Attorney General and ask for a pattern and practice investigation. These are options that this board has, and I'm willing to have a further conversation. You know, I want to hear what you folks have to say and what you folks guide me to do, and then we can go from there. I will say this, and I know members of the public are here, and I've talked to many of these members of the public about this. So what do we currently have? Let's throw all the facts out, if I may. We can sit here and say that we have an audit, right? A state audit that was just done. Since that audit was released, it was released on the day that Sheriff Gore retired. Now you could say that every death that has happened this year has happened after Sheriff Gore retired. True statement, true statement. You could also say that 5 folks have died in custody last month. True statement. And we're up to, I think, 13 or 15-ish for the year. You could say all of that. You could say that many of these deaths are natural. You could say that too. You could say that the others are drug related. You could say that when the Dying Behind Bars series started by the Union Tribune, that I think, and I could be wrong, but I think the number one concern were suicides in custody. As of this point, this year, yes, looks like there's one possible suicide. It's one too many. Everybody on this call acknowledges that any death is too many. Of course, we understand that. But it went from a high a couple of years ago to now, okay, there's something's changed, right? So something has changed. Now, you could say, you can make the argument to throw it out there that we have a sheriff right now till January or February. We have an election going on. We have the assistant sheriff, brand new, over Detention Services Bureau, implementing all kinds of things that have never been implemented. So you can say things are being responded to. You can also say there could be some funding issues. You could also say there's a big morale problem. There's an issue with mandatory overtime. There's an issue with being able to attract people that want to work in the jails, staff-wise, but also nurses and mental health clinicians. So much so that there have to be hiring bonuses and whatnot. These are things that are being put in place. So you can say the conditions of the jails. I want to go back to Santa Clara, okay? So what resulted in the Attorney General's office providing a pattern and practice investigation, starting it were 3 things. Condition at the jails. So I'll let you folks, you've heard from the public, you have your opinions based on our reports and whatnot. Resistance to local oversight, to lawful oversight. Okay. The department responds to our policy recommendations. Do they implement all of them? No. Do they implement 60%? Yes. Was tonight not a good night to have this conversation? Because I know that you folks are upset about the one policy recommendation response about disparate practices. Right, it's true. Those are true. But to say resistance to lawful oversight, I'm gonna leave that up to you folks to determine. And then other misconduct. We're talking about other alleged misconduct. Staff bringing stuff in and whatnot, not been proven yet, to my knowledge. Now, if the department has information about that, then we're gonna ask them for that, if they can turn that over. So I'm simply, as my role as the executive officer, and I hope I'm not rambling, I want to present all the sides, everything that I know for and against it. One would think that maybe some of those things don't exist and that there have been positive changes. This administration seems to be responsive. It does. Having said that, you can't fight the fact that that's still occurring. But you can say the department's acknowledged 2 things. Drugs are the primary concern. We, as CLERB, the local oversight, that's actually relevant for the first time in a long time and proactive for the first time in a long time, are addressing those concerns. We, as the local oversight, and again, maybe too little too late, we are asking for jurisdiction over medical and mental health professionals. Nobody's ever asked for that before. Granted, it's going to take a while to happen. So this board has an opportunity now. Do you allow the department to continue to move forward with the changes that they're trying to do, or do you make this recommendation to the Attorney General itself or to the Board of Supervisors? That's all that I know. I'm telling you that's what I got. And I turn it over to you, Chair Delaney.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. I'd like to hear from members of the public. Are there anyone that would like to make a
There's
comment?
we have one thus far, and that's
Okay.
Mr. Miller.
Okay.
Mr. Miller?
Mr. Miller?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yes, when we started the Saving Lives in Custody campaign in 2020, and we were asking for the AG to come over and take charge of the jails, our perspective on it has evolved since then. We know that they cannot do a sustained administration of the jail, but we also found that there are other states that have administrative bodies, vices the sheriff's department, overseeing the jails. So it is possible. We understand that there's a constitutional obligation that the sheriffs have to regulate the jails, but it also says that we have houses of correction, which are not actually technically jails, so that there are ways that we can still put in administrative not loopholes, but administrative action to sort of get another perspective in on managing these jails. And this is not the first time that this kind of thing has been asked for. The illustrious Leon Williams back in the 1990s asked for an oversight, a change of responsibility, administrative change on the jails. It didn't work in the 1990s. It should work in the 2020s. It should. It really should. So legislation will be the way from our further investigation of this. But what happens is we need some kind of change of guard when it comes to administrating the mundane of the jail. So when you're looking into this possibilities, the mundane part of it, like food services is mundane, medical is mundane. The administration of people coming in and out, whether it's with drugs or whatever, that part can be legislated, or that part can be given over to someone else. Containing riots, that's specific to law enforcement, and that can be. So we need to look for all these opportunities to say yes, and our evaluation of this has grown since 2020 and since 2021, when the Saving Lives in Custody Act, which follows on from our campaign, has been designed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. I see Dr. Packard. Dr. Packard.
Yeah, that I really appreciate Mr. Parker bringing this up. It's kind of refreshing to have this depth of discussions, and I hope the board gets involved in it. Maybe this is something that's so complex that it might be good to do another special community forum on it. But I think that from my point of view in the community, we'd be interested in pursuing some of these things in more detail to really see if a lot of recommendations have been approved, but I'm not sure if the system change that a lot of people want is happening. So this really does warrant a lot more discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Packard, or I'm sorry, Dr. Packard. At this point, Chair Delaney, I don't see any other public comment.
Okay, thank you. I see Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. Mr. Parker, our jail inspection program, I would think that would have an impact. And I know we're about ready to kick that off. Could I get your perspective on that?
Well, look, I think that's something that we've been permitted to do for 30 years, never done under this administration with this board. It's something we're going to do. And the department has not stood in the way. The only reason it hasn't been done yet, quite frankly, is a staffing issue on our part, right? That's really what it's come down to with training new people and whatnot, and freeing ourselves up. Do I think that maybe down the road, I need to request some kind of specific detention facility inspector that could be part of CLERB and do those inspections so that I don't do them, or our supervising special investigator doesn't do them? That's something that's a full-time job, right? There's 7 detention facilities. So that's where we stand. We look to kick that off once we get our new person trained. I keep saying that, but we got to get them trained and up and running and handle our current caseload. But then to your point, our inspections for each facility are going to pertain specifically to the complaints and the deaths that have occurred in that facility over the preceding year. For the first time, it's going to be preceding 2. So look, I think that would definitely help us to point out some of these conditions and to see what goes from there, and to see if the department is willing to cooperate as we move forward, as they've done thus far in drafting our guidelines.
Sorry, I was muted. Anyone else? To Mr. Wilson's point, I think that's a very good idea. Something that we worked on very hard, and I think will have definitely shed some light on what's going on. And I think that COVID got in the way of that. So I'm looking for any other comments. None being. What do you want to do, board? Shall we wait and pick up the jail inspections and see what happens there, so that we are able to speak more factually? Or Mr. Parker? Okay, Vice Chair Pintar?
I'm not sure I have a good answer. I would just say I will restate what I said a couple months ago when we talked about an additional study. We have recommendations. We have a lot of data. We have many studies. We have many things that take time. And I feel like it is part of our job to push for these changes. It's the County Board of Supervisors that is, the county governing board. I am concerned that going down another path doesn't get the kind of change we need now. I'm willing to push hard. I think we asked the Board of Supervisors to push hard, particularly since we'd be asking for something that we know that the Attorney General can't do. I would like for us to take action as a board, as an oversight board. I don't know. I feel like asking somebody else to come in and take over is letting us off the hook. It's letting the sheriff off the hook. It's letting the County Board of Supervisors off the hook. So I don't know. That's probably not going to be a popular opinion, but I don't want to wait for something that's going to take so much time in order to make changes that need to be made today, that need to be made now. 5 deaths this month.
Yeah.
That's how I feel.
Thank you. So Mr. Parker, where are we at? And just so that new board members know, we voted a few months ago. Let me backtrack. We did a study, or we commissioned a study about the deaths in the detention centers. And several months ago, then we voted to do a follow-up on the why the deaths are happening and how they can be avoided. Can you give us an update, Mr. Parker, on where we're at on that?
Sure, there's not much to update other than I can tell you that it's up to me. I'm continuing to write. There are contract issues, right? So I have to write a single source letter, a sole source letter to justify moving forward with who did it before, or it goes out for a bid again. So that's where we are with that. As we move forward, I don't know what's going to happen or if that's going to be approved or not. And those things are confidential in nature anyway. So that's where we are. That's where we are.
So we have that. We have. When do you think we could reactivate the detention center facility? Not tours, but inspections.
I mean, actually start them?
Yes.
I wanted to start them by the first quarter of this year. They are a priority of mine. But again, the priority is to investigate the deaths and whatnot with the staffing that we have.
Right.
And so I'm still continuing to assess, do we have enough staffing? Once we get this person up and running, then I'll be better able to give that to you. Look,
Okay.
I want to get them done like yesterday, but I would be lying to you if I said, oh, we'll get them done by September. We're going to start by September 1st.
Understood. Okay. I just want the public to know sort of what's going on, where we're at. Mr. Wilson?
I actually agree with Ms. Pintar. I think if we start another action, and like we say, we punt it into the grandstand, it's just going to delay our effort. And we've gotten to a point where we're beginning to get a little traction, and we're being able to press things, and see things happen. And I would like to see us to continue on that track for this year. And we kick off the jail inspection program. We'll get an idea if things are improving in the jail. I know there's been some major changes made. We have the assistant sheriff in charge of the detention facility. I think she's only been there, going on 3 months. I think there are some things that are ongoing. We just have to stay on top of them, and continue to push them. We know, the mail may be a problem. It concerns me that the staff and the medical personnel come and go from the jail. If anybody's been through the TSA line lately, everybody gets checked there. They do it thousands of people in an hour, probably millions in the day. So I think there are some things that we can start pressing on. In addition to that, I think also if we get some supervision or oversight of medical personnel, that will also create some places where we can have leverage. And I understand they're doing a new medical contract. They're in the process of it, or they just finished it up. So I'm just hesitant in creating another moving piece. And I would like us to focus on what we've been doing. None of this is quick. I'd like things to change overnight, but it just takes time. So I'm in full agreement with Ms. Pintar's comments, and I think we should continue to press hard.
Okay. You brought an interesting point. Pilots, flight attendants, and all that, they have to go through security. So
Yes.
I don't know why.
Pilots,
sheriffs- Yeah,
all
right. That being the case, is there anyone else that has any comments? Mrs. Youngflesh, do you?
I have a comment.
Sorry?
I have a comment. I raised my hand.
Oh, yeah, I was, Ms. Youngflesh, and then I'll get to you, Mondragon. Thank you, Ms. Mondragon. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Delaney. I know this is a robust discussion, and maybe I'm not following it completely. I don't believe that there is a motion pending at this point. I wouldn't be in support of anything that would, of course, be against the law. And I think that would be imprudent of the board to sort of further anything against law. I think that would be obviously would not be taken seriously, first off, but also just not be wise. That being said, I understand the need to continue to press because we have traction. At the same time, I think I wouldn't want to just for the sake of hurrying things, do something just to continue traction. So I think that's a fine line that you have to walk at this point. And I think that needs to be considered when you're looking at all the options. I appreciate Vice Chair Pintar's comments. With that being said, is there a specific motion at this point that we're entertaining as far as moving forward?
No, there isn't right now. I just wanted to comments before I got somebody to make a motion.
Okay.
Is that, you good with
Yeah,
that?
I just wanted to make sure because I know we're talking about this. If I missed that, I wanted to understand more fully. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mondragon, and I want to ask you, do you want me to call you Federico Mondragon or just Mondragon?
Federico's fine.
Federico and not Mondragon.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Or either or is fine. They're both.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
I just had a question of clarification. So there's a report that has been commissioned and that's going through the process. Is that correct?
We had a report and it was completed. It was by Analytica, and Mr. Parker can send you a copy of it if you'd like to read. It's actually quite interesting.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to have, I'm a visual person, so I think it would be helpful to have something that kind of leading up in the pathway of like addressing moving forward investigations of facilities.
Mr. Parker, could you send her a copy of it when you get a minute?
Absolutely. I'll send her a copy of Analytica's report. I'll send her a copy of the detention facility inspections. Just so you know, we did meet for that 1 hour, but there's additional meetings that will happen with Dr. Brown and Ms. Federico. We'll cover those topics as well.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to go back to Mr. Wilson, or I'll go back to Vice Chair Pintar. Would either one of you, Mr. Wilson, would you like to, you seemed like you wanted to make a motion, or you were kind of verbalizing. Ms. Pintar?
I have a question. Do we have to make a motion if we're not going to? I don't think there's a motion on the floor. And
There
I
is
think
not.
that maybe Ms. Youngflesh may have misunderstood my comments, but I was not recommending making a recommendation for a motion. I don't think that there's an action to be taken is my point.
All right, let me check with council. Ms. Hoffman, do we need to take a vote on this, or can we just let it go and continue with what we're doing?
If there's no motion on the table, there's nothing to vote on.
Okay, perfect. That being the case, we'll move on unless someone else has any other comments. Okay. So next agenda item is discussion of and determination of next steps for improvement opportunities identified by the San Diegans for Justice. And I'll turn it back over to Mr. Parker again.
Thank you, Chair Delaney. This is a topic that I briefly, we went over a couple of months ago, and then we had a subcommittee about the San Diegans for Justice. For those of you who are new or members of the public, San Diegans for Justice did an in-depth study on us in an attempt to find ways to make us more relevant, to strengthen us. And so they came back after like a 6-month process, basically, and recommended approximately 70 areas, potential areas for improvement or opportunities for improvement. Now, we've talked about them a couple of times now, but the subcommittee comprised of Chair Delaney and Ms. Kink, and myself. I'm not a subcommittee member, but I was there to document. Basically, I had gone over it anyway and then presented to subcommittee. So out of those about 70, there are 2 of the areas that the subcommittee will not support, but they support everything else. And many of those are already occurring. We're already updating things, but so at this point, they recommend to you as the board to move forward and direct me to do something with these other items. The ones that they don't think we should move forward with are on page 2. Both of them are on page 2 under board procedures and decision making. The first one is consider requiring board members to attest to having reviewed the summary report and key evidence prior to decision making. Without getting into too much detail about closed session, not specific cases, but as you know, our rules and regulations state you will deliberate, you shall deliberate each case, and obviously that happens. This board deliberates every single case. It's done. Evidence is talked about, reports are talked about, videos viewed, whatnot. It happens. So that's how come they're not going to recommend having that done. And then consider appointing the executive officer to a term of years with removal only for cause. they don't believe that the executive officer should be appointed for any term, but should serve as the executive officer currently does, basically at the will of the board. And pretty much that's it. So your executive officer can be dismissed with a majority vote. So they like that, and they want to continue with that as the deal. Everything else, if I understand correctly, Chair Delaney, Ms. Kenk, have I misspoken? Is there anything I'm missing? And if I'll let you folks take over, and I'll turn it back over to the subcommittee.
Thank you. No, that was a good report. I appreciate it. Ms. Kenk, do you have anything you want to add?
I have nothing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, members of the public, are there any comments?
I don't see any.
Okay. Members of the board. Somebody want to make a motion? We have a motion from Mr. Wilson. Is there a second?
Chair Youngflesh.
Yes.
Dang, I'm sorry I keep doing that. Chair Delaney, my gosh, it's only
That's
been
okay.
a couple
I'll
weeks.
just change my name. You
All
don't
right,
mind me, Ms.
anyway.
Youngflesh, do you? You call,
No.
they can blame
Chair
you.
Delaney, there
Yeah.
is a public comment.
Oh, okay,
Mr. Miller.
good. Okay, Mr. Miller, hello.
Hello, I just wanted to congratulate San Diegans for Justice on that report, and I thank you to take those recommendations on board. That's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right. So we had Mr. Wilson. Do we have a
Second.
Okay. We have a second by Ms. Kank.
Chair Delaney, I'm sorry, what was the motion?
The motion was to accept the recommendations. Wasn't that it, GI? Yeah.
If I may,
Yes.
to accept the recommendations, in the motion, you're going to direct me to do something? Like direct me to work with county staff?
Yes.
To-
I'm sorry, yeah, we'll reiterate that one. Mr. Wilson, could you restate the motion, please?
I move we accept the motion and the two exceptions that Mr. Parker engaged the county staff on the two exceptions that were not going to be implemented.
And then to follow through with the recommendations for county staff,
Yes.
for supervisors and all that. Does that suffice, Mr. Parker? Okay, just want to make sure it's clear. All right. And Ms. Kank, is that okay with you? You there, Bonnie?
I'm here. You broke up, so
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you okay with that?
if
motion?
I second that motion, if that's what you're after.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, any other discussion? Pastor Spriggs, could you?
The vote? Yes.
Please.
Susan Youngflesh,
Yes.
Eileen Delaney,
Yes.
Pastor Robert Spriggs Jr. says yes. Dr. R. Lee Brown, Nadia Kain Ayub,
Yes.
Bonnie Kink,
Yes.
Marianne Pintar,
Yes.
Tim Ware, G.I. Wilson,
Yes.
and Ariana Federico Montalvo.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, the last one is reconsideration of the amendment to CLERB regular meeting schedule. And Mr. Parker will explain this.
Okay, so last month, we talked about, oh, I remember. Okay, so there was an issue with our regular meeting schedule at the County Administration Center. The second Tuesday of the month was not necessarily going to be available any longer because of the Board of Supervisor meetings. So that room is the overflow room where we have our meetings. So the option was presented for you folks to use to change the meeting day to Monday or Thursday at the County Administration Center, or the board then brought up, well, what about the County Operations Center up in Claremont Mesa? So the board decided you folks voted to have the meetings on the second Tuesday of the month at 6 p.m., changing the time to 6 p.m. at the County Operations Center. Unfortunately, once that decision was made by the board, additional information, when I communicated with the property folks up there, there's some issues. Number one, it's going to cost us more money because additional security would have to be had, private security, in addition to the deputies. The deputies are already going to be there. We already have deputies at the CAC providing security, but you're going to need private security as well to monitor the getting into the County Operations Center, 2 gates that are going to be open. So you have to pay for that, but that's not really the big cost. The big cost is at this point, X-ray or the equipment up there isn't required until CLERB all of a sudden starts having its meetings. And then now CLERB will be responsible for the calibration of and the movement of, and if they want that, the metal detectors or whatnot to be removed, that's all on CLERB. So that's problematic as far as financially. So that's where we are. So I'm coming back to you as a board. I know there was great concern about the travel times and whatnot to the CAC, but I'm coming back to you saying it has not been, and it's not the, ideally, it looks as if the best thing to do financially and working and coordinating and everything is to have your meetings at the CAC. So if that's what you folks decide to do, then we're back to the Monday or Thursday. And I think what we said last month was, if that's what you want to consider, that Thursdays would be the better option for the Sheriff's Department for security purposes. So that's, I'll kick it back to you, Chair Delaney. Hopefully I explained this as best I could.
Okay, thank you. I do think that one of our board members had a concern about Thursdays. That was Ms. Kina, is there any way that you could change your other meeting if we did Thursdays?
I cannot.
Darn, okay.
Or I'm sorry, Chair Delaney.
Yes.
It's not that Mondays don't work. It's just that it's better for the Sheriff's Department to provide the security. They'll make it work.
Okay.
It's just Thursdays were better for them staffing wise. That's all. But if this board decides Monday, then they'll do what they can to make it work.
Okay. All right. Ms. Kank? Ms. Kank?
Okay, if we do Mondays, I have to work on Mondays. What time would we be meeting?
We have to figure that out as well.
Yeah, because I work until 4. So if we do 5:30 or 6, not a problem.
And 6 is a horrendous time to be driving to get down there, but
5:30 is even
oh yeah,
not
it's
good
just
for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Ms. Federico?
So the option is the second Monday or the second Thursday of the month?
Correct, yes.
I wouldn't be able to do second Mondays. I have a general meeting in the evenings that I facilitate.
Okay,
But
let me just,
if needed, I can like push to move it at work, but I just wanted to share that.
okay. Let me just do this if it's okay. Just by a show of hands, how many people can do Thursday? Is that, am I able to do that, council? I just want to move this ahead. 1, 2, 3. Oh God, let's go back here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The screen keeps moving. All right, Bonnie, myself, GI, Miss Federico, Marianne, Susan. Not right now. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pastor Spriggs?
What is this vote for again? I'm sorry.
We're not voting. I'm just trying to figure out how many people could do it if we did on Thursday. You're muted.
On Thursday, I could do it.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we're missing. Where are we? We're missing.
We're missing Tim Ware. He's not here
Tim.
tonight.
Yeah. And Susan.
And Susan.
And Susan, yeah.
You're missing Dr. Brown. You're missing Dr. Brown.
Dr. Brown, where is he gone? Oh,
He's gone. He's gone.
oh. Okay. All right. And how many people could do Monday? One, two, three, four, five.
Depends on what time.
Pardon me?
It depends on what
Yeah,
time.
right. 1, 2, and Ariana, you can't either, but you might be able to change Whereas Miss Kina, you cannot change hers. Could we ask you to, oh, I know you need an answer now, Paul. All right, let's say we're gonna do it on Monday. And then what time? So Bonnie, how long will it take you to leave work to get?
See, this is what scares me because I work, and if my last call goes long,
you can't make it. Yeah.
6 o'clock before I could get there.
I don't want to lose anyone.
Can I ask a question?
What I can do is just say, hi, I can't talk to you anymore.
To us or your client? All right, Ms. Cantor, sorry.
I know likely it's better for the public to have it after hours, but is daytime meeting like some other boards do a possibility or no? Does that make it better for anybody or does it make it worse for everyone else because everyone has to work?
I would, at this point, I'd like to hear from the community, public.
I would actually, can we just ask the board members first though? Like,
sure, we can ask the board members.
Is it not a possibility at all because it interferes with your work? Or is it better because you have, board meetings that you have to be at in the evenings? That's my question.
Yeah. Oh, you mean the evening meetings or daytime?
I'm asking if daytime meetings on a particular day might be better than a meeting on another day. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Anybody want to jump in there?
I work during the day.
Okay. So that's out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey.
I know that Ms. Youngflesh does, and GI, you have different days that you work. Bonnie, Nadia, Ms. Kina, you work, correct?
If I know what day it's going to be, I will take the day. That will be my day off.
Can you take Mondays off?
I prefer not to because I get paid time and a half when it's a holiday.
Oh, okay.
I work on a Monday.
Oh dear.
Can I-
All right.
Can I say something?
Of course.
Okay, so it sounds like everybody likes Tuesdays still, right?
Yeah.
Everybody loves Tuesdays. We're all about Tuesday. Okay,
Right.
so maybe I can research whether the third Tuesday or the fourth Tuesday or some other Tuesday. I don't know. I mean, maybe there are board meetings. I don't know.
I think they do 2 and 4.
I don't know, but maybe you folks allow me to research with the folks at the CAC to see if there's any other option at the CAC other than Monday and Thursday. I don't know. All right, but I don't think we need to have an answer right at this moment, only because you folks just voted to continue your teleconferencing option for 30 days, right, unless that emergency thing goes away, right? But let me see what I can do. Does that sound like a reasonable option? Ms. Hoffman, do you have any information that I don't have about Tuesdays?
I do have the board calendar. I don't know that it's a regular, I mean, they skip a week in between and there's typically 2 a month, and then some months without any.
Okay.
I think it's
So
usually
let
the
me,
second and the fourth.
let me, if it's amenable to this board, please allow me to follow up to see what Tuesdays we can do so that
Okay.
everyone gets to stay, and then we do that. And then I'll come back to
Perfect.
you next week. Fair?
That sounds great. Thank
All
you,
right.
Paul. Appreciate that.
Thank you. All right.
All right, so that being done. All right, next one is unfinished business. Mr. Parker.
I'm coming. Okay. No public, I'd just like to cover both of these at once, and if that's okay. There's no voting or anything. So the pursuing the legislation to add a policy to the county legislative program in support of increased transparency. The bill that was going through during the last legislative cycle was pulled to increase the transparency. It was pulled. So if this board, I don't know, it's not really on here, it's just an update, but and so I'll defer to Ms. Hoffman. The county's legislative program is being established right now, is my understanding, but perhaps I put it on next month's agenda for you to vote to allow, to do that again. Ms. Hoffman, does that make sense? Yes, so that'll be a topic for next month to add that focus again. That's number one. Number two, I already mentioned in the executive officer report that very, very good productive conversations with county council about this whole jurisdiction issue. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and I don't know when it's going to be done, but we're moving forward, making some progress on getting that jurisdiction. So that's really the only updates I have. I'll turn it back over to you, Chair.
Do you want us to vote on it to reaffirm?
Ms. Hoffman, I don't think we can. It's not a voting item, is it? It's just me providing an update. But
Well, it says authority, update authority.
yeah, I'm updating you on what you folks asked me to do before.
Okay. So we don't need to vote on it again. Sherry or Ms. Hoffman?
I don't think you can, but
okay.
Mr. Parker was saying we could bring it back next time.
All right.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well,
Thank
actually,
you.
what we'll do is we'll bring it back for the special meeting agenda on August 23rd, so we can get that done rather quickly. We'll
Perfect.
put it on there.
Okay,
Okay.
good. All right, our next
Thank
one is board member comments. Does any member of the board want to make a comment? No, okay. Oh. Ms. Kinayoub. Oh, suddenly, okay, Ms. Kinayoub.
I would like to request for us to invite the sheriff to our next meeting to speak on the policies regarding transgender people in the county jails.
Ms. King?
I just want to greet and welcome the new board member. Thank you for taking your time out to do this. It's very important.
Thank you, Bonnie. Ms. Pintar?
I also just wanted to welcome Ms. Federico to our board. Look forward to working with you.
Absolutely. All right, Ms. Youngflesh. Oh, you're muted.
I echo Vice Chair Pintar's comments. I wanted to greet Ms. Federico Mondragon to the board and welcome her, and I look forward to working with her as well.
And for those of you that have never, that are new, that might not have met Ms. Youngflesh, she was our chair for 2 years, and she's a hard act to follow, but I'll try. Thank you. Okay, any other comments? And with that, we'll go to the Sheriff and Probation Liaison query. Does anybody have any questions that they want to ask? Mr. Wilson?
Can we get a number of cases the sheriff is investigating for other agencies for their use of force? And is the sheriff's department currently being investigated by another agency regarding their use of force? Can we start getting a report on that, the number of cases that's happening in?
I think not last meeting, but the month before, I had asked for maybe a little bit more information about your agreement. Mr. Parker, I saw you raise your hand.
Right. Because we were dealing with the drug presentation tonight and all of the other options on the table tonight, I chose not to ask the department to do that this month. I can give you the answer right now, but I can work with the department if you'd like. But at this point, it's my understanding, Sergeant Tingley could jump in and tell me if I'm wrong. But actually, you know what? So that I don't misspeak, Sergeant Tingley, do you have the answer to that?
I do not have an answer for that at this time. I'll have to get back to you, Mr. Parker.
All right. My understanding is that there are two that the department is investigating right now. Two.
Or another
And
agency.
that's my understanding. And if I'm wrong, I'll correct myself. Sergeant Brayman.
Yes, Paul Parker, that is correct. We are currently, our department only has done 2 OISs for other departments per the MOU.
Thank you.
And no one is investigating, neither the San Diego PD or Chula Vista is investigating the Sheriff's Department right now, correct?
There are pending cases that we have had that are done by one, I believe is El Cajon PD, and one is done by the San Diego Police Department.
But since the MOU, pursuant to the MOU.
I don't believe that there is any in effect right now from that.
I believe you're correct. So thank you, Sergeant Brayman, for that information. Mr. Wilson, hopefully that suffices. And what I can do, if you'd like, I keep a tally of it anyway. And if you'd like it, it's part of the executive officer report. I can do that too. It's whatever's easier for the board.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. And also, as a reminder, the interim sheriff agreed to come and talk about the MOU, how it's the procedures, the policies, the protocols, the criteria that they're using.
And I will work with Sergeant Tingley with Sergeant Brayman's departure to arrange for the department. Now, to be clear, Mr. Wilson, I know what the sheriff himself said. Are you asking specifically for the sheriff and to Ms. Kenayu's point as well, specifically the sheriff to discuss the transgender folks in the county jails and specifically the sheriff to discuss the MOU, or a sheriff's representative for both topics?
I would like to have the sheriff since it was signed by the highest acting official in the sheriff's department and the chiefs of police. I mean, they're the action officers on this.
Noted. Sergeant Tingley, there's that. And then Ms. Kenayu, I saw you nodding your head for the sheriff. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. So Sergeant Tingley, the sheriff for both items, and we can work on when the sheriff can be available with his schedule to do so.
Ms. Youngplus, is your hand up? Are you raising your hand, or is that a legacy hand?
It's a legacy hand. I apologize.
Okay. So I want to ask Sergeant Brayman, is this your last meeting with us?
Yes, I was actually going to make a comment. Yes, this will be my last meeting with you all as the CLERB liaison. I've definitely learned quite a bit. It's been challenging and rewarding. And I do thank Paul and all his investigators. They're very thorough and very professional. And you will have Sergeant Tingley from moving forward as your CLERB liaison.
Well, thank you very much for your service. We appreciate it. Thank you. And welcome, Sergeant Tingley.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank
I
you.
also note that Sergeant Daniel Dennis has promoted to lieutenant. And we do not have his replacement as of yet. So we'll have a new DSP sergeant probably in the next.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Does anyone else have any questions for our liaisons? No. Okay, that being said, we will go into closed session. So Council, could you read us into closed session? And before she does, let's take a 10-minute break. I should say after she reads us in, we'll take a 10-minute break. Sorry.
Okay, so at 11:33, this board will convene into closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54957 to consider items 12A and 12B on tonight's agenda.
So it's 8:24, so 10 minutes from now, we'll be back. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, public. Appreciate it.